about 2003. I started with AX 3.0, I think it was Service Pack 4, but the oldest or most vintage version of Accept I've worked with was 2.5. And my first F&O implementation was back in 2016. And the next year I joined Microsoft in 2017, at first as the premier field engineer in the support engineering organization. And now I've moved to pre-sales and I'm working as a global black belt for D365. And as mentioned, I'm based near Zurich, Switzerland. From the technical perspective, my favorite topics are code quality. I did a lot of code reviews as a premier field engineer. I've worked a lot on extensibility, integration, test automation, and recently the topic of the database size in the cloud has been a lot on my desk, hence this presentation. And you can find me on LinkedIn using the picture below my face. The purpose of this presentation is generally to provide an introduction to the database size management topic when upgrading from legacy AX applications to Dynamics 365 applications. We used to have Ax2012, now we have Dynamics 365 Finance, Supply Chain Management, and Commerce. The session is going to include some practical advice on how to analyze and reduce the size before operating, some best practices, and tips how to maintain a healthy database size going forward in the cloud. The target audience for this session mainly are technical experts who are going to be involved in migration activities or are already involved in migration activities. Partners, primarily, as I've heard, there's a lot of partners here, so that's exactly my target audience. However, also existing AX customers would also be interested in this, specifically if there's any people who are on internal teams who will be doing this upgrade themselves. And mostly this is going to be more relevant for those who are facing larger databases. So if you're running a 100 gigabyte small Ax2012 database, typically this size management topic is not a big deal. However, those running on multi-terabyte databases could actually face these problems. And that's exactly the audience I would like to help with. It would be also useful for managers just to understand what's going on, to do some budget planning, and also sellers. I'm actually a seller. I sell Dynamics these days. I don't longer implement or support it. And when selling Dynamics, understanding how to deal with the database is also a good skill to have. Now, a bit of an introduction on the topic itself. First off, why is this important? And personally, on my desk, this topic lands mainly due to cost considerations. There's a certain amount of storage space allocated and included in the licensing cost. However, any storage requirements going above that have to be paid extra. So in my situation, most of the time when I have to deal with this topic, it's because of cost considerations. The customers want to know how much this is going to cost in the future, partners want to plan and so forth. So very importantly, this comes with a cost topic because storage costs. And if you're trying to move all your historical transactions in the cloud, into the transactional database, that might come with a cost. Second is, of course, performance. As we know with databases, especially Dynamics databases, smaller is faster. So, of course, keeping the application lean and mean is the best way of keeping it performant going forward. So often this is also a question of performance, specifically if we know that there have already been some performance issues on premise, and now somebody might be a little bit concerned how is this going to look in the cloud. So often we also have to look at the database, analyze the database, understand what was happening before, just to make sure that the same issues don't occur going forward. And of course, the third topic is that when moving to the cloud, so migration to Dynamics 365 for you, the customers, or for your customers, now I'm speaking to the partners, is going to be the last ERP upgrade project. So we will be moving to the evergreen application. Dynamics in the cloud is always green, always up to date. And that means this is a good opportunity to clean the solution up, make sure that it only has in it only what we actually need to solve our business needs. So generally, it's a good cleanup moment. So these are the main reasons why I encountered this topic: cost, speed, and cleanliness of the application solution. I'd like to also discuss a little bit, for those who perhaps don't know this yet, the differences between AX, legacy ERP applications, and Dynamics 365. When it comes to actual database sizing, is that we actually have the database compression enabled for all instances, which is a big deal. One of the biggest problems when it comes to database size management in Ax2012, the worst cases where we see major issues with this, is that the compression has not been enabled. And I don't know how many of you have tried enabling compression on an existing database. For those who haven't, it's not an easy, straightforward task. Worst case I've seen was, I think it was 55 terabytes existing Ax2012 database, which was growing out of control. There was no archiving, nothing. And even compression was no longer possible to enable compression on it, because first it requires considerable effort to plan, to actually how to understand which indexes we're going to compress, how and why. And the worst part is actual execution. If it's a running application, on an extreme cases, sometimes a compression can take several days. So we actually had a situation which was so big, it was no longer feasible to compress it because we wouldn't have enough time, as the database needs to be intensively used during the compression. So enabling database compression for all instances out of the box helps us to resolve this age-old problem that we had on legacy AX applications straight out of the get-go. So immediately all instances is compressed. So from database management, this is one of the biggest differences. And then, of course, we have the data lake. We'll talk a lot about the data lake today because it's actually a very important way how we manage the database in the cloud, how we offload the database in the cloud. And the biggest difference is that we have offloaded intensive reporting and BI workloads, as well as historical data out of the transactional database and into the data lake, which is actually a very cost-effective way of storing data. It's one of the cheapest ways of storing data on Azure. It's the data lake. At the same time, we are offloading intensive workloads from the transactional database out into the data lake and using Power BI to fetch that data. A typical issue, what I've seen is huge analytical work, analyzing payments, financial performance, running on a transactional database in Ax2012. When that report, when some of those reports are hit off, the application grinds down to a halt. Again, we are able to manage the size and the speed of the application by moving these workloads outside of F&O, outside of the transactional database. Another important change is the blob storage, which is now used for attachments and binary data. Another problem of legacy AX is that a lot of the files, not a lot, all of the attachments, all of the files you attach, unless it's stored somewhere on SharePoint, is actually going to land in the transactional database. So you had images, huge PDFs sitting in the same database where your inventory transactions were sitting, bloating that database massively. Again, we have fixed this and we are moving binary data attachments into the blob storage. So what we have done on the database level is very important. We have enabled compression. We have utilized data lake and blob storage to move data out of the application, which used to sit in the transactional database outside of it. Then, of course, we have also much more out-of-the-box cleanup scripts, which we didn't have in Ax2012. We had a pretty good bunch of them, but they have been improving, and we're building more of those out of the box in F&O. Very important is we have actually upcoming inventory transaction purging and archiving functionality. Unfortunately, I haven't yet seen the documentation of this feature, but it is coming up. So it's going to enable us to archive and purge inventory transactions out of the finance operations transactional database. This functionality should be used. We did have intelligent data management framework in Ax2012, but it was very difficult to use, especially if you wanted to archive inventory transactions or ledger transactions. So I'm personally very excited for this feature coming out for F&O to archive inventory transactions. But the biggest difference is, of course, the massive technological change. We have Power Apps, Power BI, Logic Apps, IoT, Data Lake, Synapse, all these technologies which have now surrounded and revolutionized how technologically the Dynamics ERP application is implemented. All of this also means that very often going forwards, a lot of customizations we have done before are going to change. The way we use the application is going to change. If we used to store a certain amount of data in the transactional database, well, now we don't need to. Now we store it in data lake. Now we store it in blob storage, and so forth. Getting now a little bit more back on track about the database compatibility. This little table can quickly explain how do legacy AX applications, how compatible are legacy AX applications with finance operations. The most compatible one is Ax2012 Rtm. Let me get my laser pointer so I can point at things. This is a mistake. It should be less green, it shouldn't be gray. I have an issue on my slide. But Ax2012 R3 and R2 are the most compatible versions. F&O started its life as Ax2012 R3 CU9, if I recall correctly. But of course, that was 5 years ago. So it's been growing and advancing in its own pace. However, these two applications are the most compatible, and we offer out-of-the-box code and data upgrade tooling to move you from these versions into the cloud. Very importantly, the data upgrade tooling is pretty awesome. It allows you to upgrade everything. You can move all the historical transactions, everything into F&O. On smaller databases, this is great. It just allows you to minimize the workload massively. But when it comes to big, those multi-terabyte databases, yes, the tooling allows you to upgrade all the historical transactions and load it into the new ERP application, but it might not be the best idea. Then we have the Ax2012 Rtm. We don't offer any upgrade tools for those. You need to upgrade to R3 or R2 and then execute upgrade from there. I hope we don't have many Ax2012 Rtm instances still running. If somebody does, kudos to them. It's actually pretty difficult to run that thing, but I hope that this doesn't happen too often. Then, of course, we still encounter Ax2012, 2009 applications. Those of you who have worked longer with the AX know that there was a massive change between 2009 and 2012. Specifically, General Ledger got completely rewritten. So there's a major gap in compatibility between AX 2009 and F&O. Therefore, for this application, we only offer data migration tooling. There's a special data migration tool you can use to migrate data from AX 2009 into data compatible with F&O. However, no code migration tooling is offered. And there's no tooling at all for older versions. I would say if we're running, and if someone's running AX4 and is thinking about moving to the cloud, most likely this is going to be a question of re-implementation. And now, finally getting to business. So managing database size basically sits on 4 major pillars. First is understanding the legacy database. I'm going to explain what I mean by that, and I'm going to give a couple of tips and tricks and activities which should be done. Then the next pillar is, once we understand the database, we should actually clean up the database. There are some tools which help you to do that. Sometimes you're going to need to deep dive and analyze the application structure and business logic. Then, looking forward, it's important to create a growth estimate, especially if you want to estimate how much this database is going to take in the cloud. This is such a typical question. This is the most typical question what I hear is, we have this Ax2012 database. It is XYZ gigabytes large or terabytes large. How much this database is going to be, how much space this is going to take up in the cloud. So this presentation hopefully will give you some good pointers on how to deal with that question or how to answer that question yourself. And of course, it's also important to keep the database size down in the cloud. Yes, cloud gives a lot of resources for us, but however, we should also keep the database as lean as possible. It's better for everybody. It's better for performance. It's better for costs, etc., etc. And these are the next 4 sections in this presentation. I'm going to include a small Q&A session after each of those so that we can discuss. And if you want to ask any questions, you can do that immediately after I've discussed the topic, rather than we're doing that at the very back end and then we have to go cover a lot of topics in one go. Understanding the legacy database. And this is going to involve 4 tasks. First and foremost, can't recommend this more. Find and talk to the right people. Customers probably already know the right people, but for partners and everybody else going from the side and project, find the right DBA. You need to find the people who actually know the database. Any legacy Ax2012 application has somebody who has been taking care of that application, who knows that application, who understands that application. Every database has somebody who is taking care of it. Most likely that's going to be the DBA, maybe some senior consultant who has been helping the customer deal with the project. It's very, very important to find and talk to the right people. It might seem a little bit obvious, why am I putting this here? But often I have realized that when these discussions are starting, I need to then ask somebody to find the right people. So sometimes it looks to me that this is forgotten. So you need to find the right people. My favorite person is the DBA. Typically, the DBA knows the most about the database. And for those who don't know, DBA is database administrator. Then you need to collect the data. The next slide will explain what kind of data you should collect in order to understand the database better. And then the next one is the most complicated task. What you need to do is to understand how usage is going to change in finance equations. A couple of slides ago, I discussed that there has been a major technological change. The changes regarding stuff moving to Azure Data Lake, stuff moving to Blob Storage from the database perspective. So this is very important to understand how exactly we're going to be using F&O in the cloud. Because sometimes I hear a conversation that, yes, we have this legacy application is moving to the cloud, but probably half of the customizations are going to get thrown out, or even more, because the customer now wants to go with a more standardized application. It's very important to understand this from the get-go, because without knowing how exactly finance operations is going to be used in the cloud, trying to guess how much disk space and storage space and upgrade a database is going to take, it's a futile affair. And one of the most important things to do, and you should never forget that, is use the upgrade analyzer tool. So that's available in Lifecycle Services. I will include a link at the end of the presentation explaining, pointing to the instructions on how to use it. It also includes database cleanup, besides of all the code upgrade stuff. It gives you some tips how to clean up the database without losing functionality. So it's very, very, very important to actually use that tool and look at the output. But not always it's possible. At least when things land on my desk, this tool has not been used, and then we really quickly need to figure out how we're going to shrink the database going forward. And the next couple of slides, next section of this presentation is going to actually talk about that. Gathering information, there's several things which you need to gather up front. First thing is, of course, precise current database size. Note that log doesn't count towards storage because customers have no control over log size and log file size in the cloud. But it's important to know how big exactly is the current database. Again, sounds obvious, but often we see that this needs to be then explicitly asked. Another thing which you can immediately ask specifically when you have found the DBA is ask for the disk usage by table report available from SQL Server. So that's basically an Excel file which is generated by the SQL Server Management Studio. And that's my workplace when I'm dealing with this topic. So that's going to give you an overview of exactly how the current application is consuming storage on the SQL Server. Then also historical database growth data. You should see how much the database has grown over the years. Typically, this data is available for everybody. However, the next step would be also to collect main table growth if it's possible. This is more difficult. Typically, nobody kind of pays attention to that. However, you might be able to restore, let's say, a year-old data backup and then see what was the difference between the number of sales lines, ledger transactions, inventory transactions, any kind of other major tables which are pivotal to the AX implementation. And then you can use that to create correlations between certain record numbers and the database growth, and that gives you a little bit more precise understanding on how the database is behaving currently and how it could behave in the cloud. And very importantly, because of the compression, it's important to know if the compression is in use or not on the current AX application. I would say 95% of the cases it is not used, but to cover those 5%, please explicitly talk to the DBA and find out if compression is used or not. I've noticed that this question sometimes takes a lot of time to answer because nobody knows, because this has been done quietly by the database management team. And then, yeah, it takes a while to find the right person who can then explain if it's in use or not. And then cleaning up the database, the most important step. Overview. First thing, we're going to clean up unnecessary customizations. This all ties back into the topic of understanding how your application is going to be used in F&O. So there is a major push from us and also from our partners that you should be utilizing finance and operations application as close to the standard as possible, only creating customizations where necessary. That's one aspect here. Another aspect is that because of the arrival of the Power Suite, because of the arrival of the data lake, because of the arrival of Blob Storage, a lot of customizations, well, not a lot, some customizations which have been done in directly in AX, storing data in AX, might not be necessary anymore because it's better to have those requirements pre-implemented with either using Power Automate or Azure Data Lake and so forth. So important thing is getting rid of unnecessary customizations. Is going to allow you to get rid of unnecessary database usage. Then, as I mentioned, unstructured data, images, blobs, documents, handling, etc., etc. This kind of stuff, if it has been stored in Ax2012 database, that's perfectly fine, but this stuff should not be stored in the Dynamics 365 database. So there's a customization which is storing images in the database, unrelated, let's say, document handling. This should be reworked in order for Blob Storage to be used. Unaggregated staging data. I don't know why, but very often I see one of the big tables is DMF. Somebody has forgotten to clean out the staging data or unaggregated data. So get rid of that. Make sure that there's no staging data sitting in the database. Another kind of self-explanatory topic, but it's quite funny. It doesn't always turn out that way. Is transient and temporary data. Temporary tables shouldn't be taking up this space because, well, they're temporary. Often we see that that's not actually the case, and we have temporary tables which are permanent and sitting in the database, and that means they should not be counted towards future disk space usage in the cloud. And of course, logs, my absolute favorite topic. We will discuss that a little bit more further today. But often we see logs, unnecessary logs, starting from the classic database log, ending with some logging customizations or just historical data from batch execution and so forth, sitting in the database. All of that should go out. Specifically, we'll touch upon the data lake later. A lot of the logs, even if this logging is necessary, it can be moved out to the data lake in the cloud, so it shouldn't be taking up space in your transactional database. And yeah, of course, this is not just for cleaning up. This is also for a more precise growth prediction. And more importantly, it is to prevent scares. I have seen several cases where people have come to me saying, this is a big issue. We have this huge database, and if we move it to the cloud, it's going to take up all the physically available space. It's going to be expensive and so forth and so forth. And then I run through these topics here and realize, yeah, actually, throw out 70–80% of the database. This actually happens sometimes. Now I'll show you some samples of, approximated samples. I can't use customer data. It's usual suspects first, samples later. So now we're talking about the specific table names you should be looking out for when looking at that, looking at the disk space by table usage report. So anything named AIF. AIF is the application integration framework. It's been deprecated. some tables still persist in F&O, so there's a bunch of AIF tables still there. But however, the data stored in Ax2012 AIF tables does not need to be stored in the cloud. So those typically can be thrown out. Anything which has parm in it, that's typically transient data prepped for posting, sales parm letter, and so forth. That typically should be cleaned up. There has been a cleanup script since forever for those, even in Ax2012, often not executed. Often I see these tables. And then, of course, sys database log. That is the table where all the database logging is stored, which means if somebody has enabled logging on record changes, let's say who is changing prices and so forth, that lands in the sys database log. This tends to grow really, really big. Anything with TMP, as I mentioned before, we have a situation where a table is temporary, should be temporary, but turns out that it's not temporary. And so anything with a TMP, it's immediately a suspect that this is not necessary, and we can throw that out. And of course, custom tables, again, if we see anything custom, first question, okay, is this actually going to exist in F&O? Are we going to take this customization over? So it's important to answer that question. And then batch history, very often I see this as well. So batch history is simply a historical record of execution of batch processes. For those of you who don't know, I think the majority will be aware of this. Often, and very often, batch history tables are left uncleaned up, and as an extra negative effect, once they grow unwieldy, they actually start slowing down the batch framework itself. So having a clean batch job history, it's also a good way to keep your batch jobs performing well. And then, of course, docuref. Docuref are the document attachments. Those used to be stored directly in the databases. I mentioned now the big part, the file itself is stored in the blob storage. And my personal favorite is super large ledger dimension tables, which point to very atomic financial dimension tracking. We'll discuss that a little bit later, but the biggest one I think I've seen was ledger dimension combination at 700 gigabytes uncompressed. And when we started figuring out why is this table so big, it was taking like a third of the database. Turns out that several years ago, somebody from controlling said, yeah, well, I need to actually track down every transaction down to the level of, I think, sales line number or whatnot. And they couldn't actually figure out what was the business justification for that. So we had this huge table sitting there, and yeah, turns out we don't really need it. So now the promised practical examples. So these are quick wins, what we see on the screen. What I've marked with red are tables which can pretty easily be removed from the database. So here we see a database with a lot of AIF messaging, and the batch job history in AIF messaging is 170 gigabytes. In this particular case, the application was used for some general ledger purposes, pretty aggregated, pretty high level, but it was doing a lot of batch jobs and a lot of integrations to pull data in, which was never cleaned up. This is one of those cases where it starts out with a bit of a scare, looking at, hey, we have this huge database, how this is going to look like in the cloud. And then we actually look at the contents of the database and realize, well, we're losing 80% of its size because all of this is going out the window. The sample below, it's a little bit more complicated. But again, here we see a typical usual suspect. DMF means data management framework, which is basically means that this is some custom table, probably something transient, because DMF typically means staging tables. It might be suffix staging, but generally that's a transient table. Shouldn't be storing data permanently. It's eating half the database in this case. Absolutely unnecessary. Dimension focus balance. Probably can't do much about it. AIF document log, again, 21 gig, throw it out. The rest are tables which are typically difficult to get rid of. We have accounting entries, journal transactions, and the third is a AIF message log, again, something we can throw out. In this case, I think we could save about half the size of the database. So these are pretty key ones. By the way, someone's making noise in the background, it would be nice to mute. Yep, thank you. So so these two are quick wins. when I'm dealing with the topic of database sizes and I see something like this makes me very happy because that means we can resolve this pretty quickly. Sometimes things are not that easy, and you might see something like this. And this is a pretty hard nut, again, an amalgam of several cases, what I've seen. But yeah, in this particular case, we see that there is a gargantuan number of inventory settlements, inventory transactions. We're talking billions of records, taking terabytes of data. Third table is database log. That's great, that we can throw out, right? Then again, standard tables, no customizations. All of this is very, very big. First thing, what I started looking here is the indexes. Over-indexing means that adding too many indexes on a table so that it has way more indexes than actual data. This actually happens more often than not because people just add more indexes every time they see a report running slowly, and they just add indexes without taking care of the older ones. And you end up a situation where you have a ratio 1:3 or 1:2 in this case. However, in this particular case, I went to the DBA and I said, hey, look, we have 1.5 terabytes of indexes on this table, only 700 gigabytes of data. Do you need all those indexes? He immediately told me, looked me in the eyes and said, yes, we do need them. We analyzed that. We need every single index there. So sometimes there's nothing you can do with that. However, that might be a quick win on a major database if you can actually get rid of some of the indexes. In this particular case or cases, it was not possible because all the indexes were needed. And the DBA had done their job really well and had analyzed everything. By the way, you can use the Dynamics Perf tooling for Ax2012 to analyze index usage, database usage. Those of you who are looking down an upgrade, let's say 6-12 months in advance, and you are not using Dynamics Perf on your Ax2012 database, you should use that. You should enable Dynamics Perf on your old database to analyze database statistics. And that can help you get rid of unnecessary indexes, tables, probably not, perhaps also tables, but mostly getting rid of unnecessary indexes, optimizing the database both from performance and size perspective. Next issue here was the database log. And I said, hey, can we get rid of these 800 gigabytes of database log? And I was told, no, we cannot, because turns out they had already cleaned this up. So one of the things what I always recommend doing with the database log is that, okay, there might be a business need to have it enabled. You just have to have it running. There it is. There's no way to get around it. But typically, there's no business need to have that data permanently sitting in the F&O database or the transactional database. So one of the things what you can and should do is specifically in finance operations in the cloud, move it outside, warehouse the older data, purge it, utilize the data lake in the cloud, or if it's on Ax2012, any other storage. In this particular case, they were already doing that. Yeah, I don't know why was it so big, but yeah, couldn't get rid of that, and sales lines and so forth. So basically, in this situation, there's very little what we can do mechanically, just pointing at the database and saying, okay, we can get rid of that, we can get rid of this, and life is dandy, problem is solved. So sometimes you need to go and dive much deeper. If you don't see a quick win, then that's the time to look at the actual solution design. First thing, aggregation. So a golden rule in F&O implementations is that you should store only the data what you actually need for the business needs in the application. So keep only as many dimensions as necessary. And if you're bringing in data externally, aggregate. Don't store unaggregated data if you don't explicitly need it in an unaggregated form. As an example would be details of invoices. Let's say we are billing a lot of customers and the invoices consist of a very, very large number of individual invoice lines. However, those lines might not necessarily play an important role in the general ledger. Maybe you only need just one entry in the general ledger saying that, okay, this customer owes us this much money, and that's it, instead of breaking down to every individual line. In this situation, the recommendation is keep the individual lines outside, aggregate data, bring stuff into F&O, only what you actually need to bring in. I can give you a couple of cases recently where aggregation came to be. I don't know why I had twice dealing with various companies who are doing road tolls and collecting IoT data out of the sensors on the highways. And the first idea there was we're going to bring hundreds of millions of transactions into F&O to get all of those individual IoT signals into the application. We managed to convince them that this is not a good idea and you should actually utilize the data lake for that. Because for the purposes of billing, it was not actually necessary to have all of that. You just need to sum up how many times a customer has, how many kilometers a customer has traveled on the highway, and simply based on that information, create an invoice for the customer. But there's no need to store every single detail inside. If there is a need to provide every single detail with the invoice, the best idea is to keep it outside and then attach the necessary information outside. Sometimes you can, perhaps as in the previous session, you could mix and match, I believe, there's the data from various data sources. So you could take invoice base information out of the application and then out of F&O application and then gather details from a different data source. Then, of course, archiving and warehousing. Typically, you don't need 10, 20 years of data in an ERP application. You would need maybe 3. So implementing archiving and data warehousing is an important aspect. And sometimes, specifically when customers are upgrading to F&O and they have many, many years of data they have already in the application. That was also the case in the previous sample, which was a very long-running application. We simply don't need that data into F&O, and we can move that into the data lake, thus massively reducing the need of actual database side against the actual storage space in the cloud. So archiving and warehousing is something you need to look at. Configuration. This ties back into the story of ledger dimensions. Don't have too many dimensions. Make sure that only as many dimensions as you need are configured. And then, this ties back into the previous. But always check: is the level of detail of data what we are bringing into the ERP application actually necessary? Do we really need this data in F&O, or can we aggregate, can we warehouse, can we change the configuration to have a less level, not that many details, not that atomic transactions in the app? Now, a quick couple of minutes of Q&A regarding the previous slides.
Thank you, Edgars. So there are some questions, as you can see. There is a question by Venkatesh asking any suggestion for customers on R2, R3 with virtual companies and multiple partitions if all the transactional data is needed.
Good question. Answer is long. The main issue is, of course, that partitions have been deprecated in F&O. So customers who are actually using multiple partitions might need to think about, and if there's really the need to that, might need to think about running on multiple instances. At the end of the day, it really depends on the actual size of the application. It's very difficult for me to give you like a quick, concise answer because I would need to actually see what's going on to give you a recommendation. But it's important to note that the partitions are no longer there in F&O. We removed that feature. So it sounds to me like in this particular case, when a lot of virtual companies are used and a lot of partitions are in use, they will need to kind of redesign how the company data is split up across legal entities and finance operations. Might end up running on more than one instance as well.
Next question is by Yannick, which is there a more detailed information available on upcoming inventory transaction archiving functionality?
Should be soon. Check out the release notes for the next wave. I haven't looked at them just yet. It should be in there. In any case, yeah, it should be available soon on the docs information regarding deals, but it's not there yet because I know that I haven't seen the documentation of that feature, but it's upcoming. So hold your breath, it's coming.
So that's the question so far, Edgars. Right. Did you have anything else you wanted to contribute?
Well, I have 9 more slides. So
awesome. Okay.
And we have only 12 minutes. So No worries. The bulk of the presentation has already been done. Now doing the estimate, and I like to call it the guesstimate because, yeah, the precision of trying to understand how the actual database is going to look like in the cloud after such massive changes. Yes, the databases are pretty compatible, but there is a big change on how F&O works in compared with Ax2012. So it's difficult to give a precise estimation of that. But if you want to create a guesstimate, step one, use historical database growth. Step two, take into account cleanup results. So everything what I discussed in the previous slides, getting rid of AIF tables, batch job histories, temporary tables, cleaning up your dimensions and so forth. Take all that into account. And then if database compression hasn't been applied, apply a compression ratio. This is the most guessy part of the guesstimate because there is no golden rule of how much storage, how much uncompressed storage is going to look like, how uncompressed storage data is going to look like compressed in the cloud. It's very difficult to guess it. I'm using a ratio of 1 to 3. I find that to be safe. However, in certain situations, it could be better and it could be worse. There's no way to tell. But I'm using 1 to 3 in my professional activity. Apply future growth expectations. Sometimes it might be even future contraction expectations. If you have a company which has been, let's say, a daughter company which has been generating a lot of activity in the application, a lot of transactions is now getting spun off or liquidated or sold. The application in the future might actually look smaller. I just recently had a case like that. Most of the time, customers are expecting growth, so apply some kind of a growth factor in the future. One of the things what you could do, for example, is remember I mentioned that you could collect table growth. So actually, how do the number of sales lines grows by the year, for example. So looking at those, you can also try to get some kind of a factor. How does that relate to the rest of the application to get some kind of an understanding? If we're growing our sales every year by 20-30%, how is that going to look like in the application database? Then the best way to actually do it is proof of concept. And I know that some people have done this. Proof of concept meaning is just execute the data upgrade, generate some transactions, and see how the database size actually looks like. So for that, we need a low performance environment. No need to have an expensive tier 3 or tier 4 or tier 5 environment. Low performance environment is going to do. Perform the data upgrade, load all the main data, and generate a considerable number of main transactions, be those sales, purchase letter, or anything else which is relevant for your actual implementation, and evaluate the results. That's going to give you the most precise estimation of how the database is actually going to look like in the cloud. This is a time-consuming endeavor, but it's very important to know precisely how that's going to look like. This is the best way to do it. Quick and dirty, although I don't actually recommend this. You could try to enable compression on premise and see how that looks like, but you cannot guarantee that the way you enable compression on premise is exactly the same way how compression is enabled on the cloud, because we can compress different indexes in different ways, and Dynamics in the cloud has its own algorithm of deciding how to compress, and it's not necessarily that your on-premise compression is going to actually match that. Any questions regarding growth estimate?
Thanks, Edgars. Yes, please proceed. Thanks.
Yep. Maintenance. And one of the most important things, what you can and you should do is utilize the data lake. This is really revolutionized way how we store data in the cloud when comparing to on-premise applications. All the data coming out of F&O is available in the data lake. Well, not yet. There's also an upcoming feature, but we will have the ability to have all the tables, all entities, everything into the data lake. So you have a clone of all the F&O data into the data lake. You can also utilize integration. So to bring in, if you need to combine data from various data sources, combine F&O data with data coming in from a different application, or when you need to store the detailed level. So if in an aggregation scenario, if you're bringing in data, let's say from IoT or anywhere else, you can actually store details in the data lake, and that can then be consumed together with F&O data down the road if needed. Very important, put in the historical data into the data lake. So data lake allows us to store data in any kind of format. It's an unstructured storage, so you can actually move your historical data instead of moving it into the F&O database where it's going to take up space and make things slower. You can actually move it into the data lake itself. Then logs, as I mentioned, do a log cleanup, clean up the log and purge the log, put the records in here and only keep what's really necessary in the actual transactional database. As I mentioned, any kind of IoT signals coming in from cars on highways, production data, you can store them into data lake and not store them into in the transactional database, even if you need to consume it in there. Because through Power BI and Azure Synapse, you're actually able to consume the data which is stored in the data lake directly in the application. So, for example, the embedded analytical workspaces, which contain Power BI reports, well, they're not reading data from the transactional database. They're actually reading data out of the data lake. For the user, it's seamless. So this allows you to create Power BI reports or even data flows flowing outside downstream integrations. When mixing historical data, IoT data, logs, external data together with F&O data for either exports or consumption within finance operations without the actual need of storing that data in the transactional database. So data lake, in a sense, is like a Swiss knife for database management. It does everything. It does integration, warehousing, historics, all the stuff going into the data lake. And through Synapse and through Power BI, we are able to consume that data together with F&O data. Other good habits, cleanup scripts. Can't stress that enough. Please execute cleanup scripts. They can clean up batches, staging tables, DMF history, etc., etc. Of course, before executing cleanup scripts, always check with business if there is no business need to have certain data inside. Maybe some controller is depending on the ability to look up any batch job executions, which happened years ago. So if there's these kind of needs, you have to make sure that there's a way for those business needs to be fulfilled before executing the cleanup of that data. Don't be shy to create custom cleanups. If you have customizations which are generating a lot of data, create custom cleanups to get rid of that data. Utilize the out-of-the-box archiving and purging functionality for inventory transactions. Honestly, in most of the cases where I see stuff which we cannot easily remove, InventRuns is one of the typical offenders as the big tables. Also in our biggest customers, I can see typically one of the big tables is inventory transactions. So this is going to have a very good, big positive impact on the application size and speed, utilizing this functionality. And then create custom archiving and purging functionality as necessary. If you have, again, ties back into custom cleanups, if you have customizations, clean and purge them. Again, create custom archiving. Yes, we know that not out of the box, we don't have functionality, for example, to archive sales orders. But you can still create it in a custom way for this particular customer. One of the reasons why it's difficult to do something like that, because every customer is using it a little bit differently, but create custom purging functionality. If necessary, move unnecessary data into the data lake. You can use the data lake, you can use Power BI to bring the visibility of that data to the users, even if it's no longer stored in the transactional database. And of course, watch out for new functionality. We're releasing new features every month. Of course, the archiving and purging is one of the most exciting things coming up, but there might be something similar in the future as well, although I don't actually know. I'm speculating now. So watch out for new functionality. And all of these cleanup activities, and I can't stress this enough, start this early in the project, early in the implementation planning. Don't leave these activities to the operational phase. The later you start, the more the cost, the more the stress of implementing that. That is the end of my presentation. A couple of useful links here at the end. Do read up on Upgrade Analyzer. That can help you a lot. Check the cleanup routine list on the link in the middle, and watch the latest Fast Track Tech Talk on upgrading from Ax2012 to finance operations. It's been released in September 2020. It has all the latest and greatest information. That's the end of my feature presentation. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Edgars. There is one final question. So just to end this session, to answer the final question, which was asked by Andrew Cowell, which is, do you know why the upgrade analyzer might complain about partitions when we have never had any?
This is going to sound very banal, but you have to ask support. I don't know why we would complain. If you're not using partitions, maybe somebody has created a partition, an extra partition, without actually using it. That might be the case. So just looking at the partition table, it's seeing more than one record. That means there's more than one main partition, then might be complaining about it. That's one thing which pops to mind. If there's nothing like that, as naive as it sounds, you have to contact support. Somebody should take a look at that if you feel that this is a false positive.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Edgars, for really insightful session. I know a lot of the partners and implementers will really benefit from this. So thanks to you once again. And we will share those links in the chat as well. So without further ado, we have the Microsoft MVPs online. We have Suhaib Chima, we have Dr. Ludwig, and we have Andre Arnaud. Dr. Ludwig, are you there?
I'm there. Can you hear me?
Hey, there we are. Yeah. So we have Dr. Ludwig. Dr. Ludwig would like to make a big announcement and a big introduction. Is that correct?
Well, do you know who's next, actually?
Oh, I wonder who. Maybe it's the general manager for FinOps.
Exactly. And guess where he comes from? And what language he speaks? Well, of course, it's my native language. Our next speaker who is doing the keynote is Georg Lunchnick, and I think the surname is the most difficult part, even for me as a local speaker. He's the head of, or the general manager for the finance, globalization, project operations, and human resource parts in Dynamics 365. So it's a great honor having him here in our event. And Ras, do you know what is also very nice?
Tell us.
Well, Georg does not only know Dynamics, and he's not only the general manager of Dynamics, but he has also a large experience in the industry for more than 20 years, and he is familiar with our biggest competitor. So he knows all the details, and he's the best person, I guess, who can lift Dynamics 365 to new heights and bring us really forward. So with that one, I would like to stop talking. I would like to ask all of the participants to mute their microphones and would like to hand it over to Georg to take it over from here.
Hey, thanks a lot. I hope the audio quality is good. Can you hear me okay?
Excellent, yeah.
Excellent, that's perfect. Thanks for the very kind introduction. I think this was the thunderstorm of the whole presentation. And yeah, my last name, that's I always call it, that's an ice maker, not an icebreaker, specifically in America, very complicated. As I'm from Austria, so this Lunchnick basically is very typical for South Austria. Also, thanks for giving me the opportunity to present today. And let me try to share my screen. And if you maybe can confirm that you can see, it would be great.
Yes, I can see that. Yep.
Oh, perfect. So I want to start, with this slide and really say a big thank you. I would say it's the best slide of my entire presentation. I mean, just the sheer numbers of 2.3 million active users, 750 plus user groups, And just a couple of the pictures of the real people, the faces, of this community, and from our super users and influencers. So it's really an amazing thing you guys have created. And of course, without you, basically, this whole event would not even take place. So I think sustainable success, in my opinion, is really based on a strong community. And thanks, for of course, the passion and the trust, to make this community, I think, a place for millions of users. And they want to be there, they want to find the answers, they want to learn, they want to engage, and they want to connect. So that's a really big thing. And I just wanted to, maybe use one slide with numbers, because I think the sheer impact we are driving is also pretty amazing. So if you look at, the momentum this community is driving, and I think it has also created momentum at Microsoft and motivated Microsoft to go public with the Dynamics business results. And that's the first time ever that with fiscal year 21, basically the Microsoft announced numbers around Dynamics. And I think the numbers speak for themselves. I mean, from revenue, from customers, from the growth rates. So I think that's pretty huge, because it's not only, the results itself, but I think also the willingness, to be in a spotlight, and the continuous effort, also Microsoft as a large organization basically is putting on this business and then on this success. And I think, the continued success, of course, depends that, we go hand in hand in a partnership together, so with the community and with our product aspirations, to make sure that this will continue in the future. And I don't know if you had a chance to look at the results announced this week from the fiscal year Q2, and Dynamics again nicely grow by about 40%. And if you take this as an aspiration, as if the community would grow in the same speed as the business is growing, I would expect maybe next year at the same time at this event there should be 3 to 4 million active users. And in the intro, you guys mentioned our friends in Germany, in Waldorf. They also announced the numbers today, but as you maybe saw, they were very different. So it's a really heartfelt thank you from my side. Those amazing things you guys have created, and I would now propose let's go into the content. So I wanted to maybe open with a thought, maybe I always call it a little bit the bigger picture of the changes we have seen in the last, about 20 plus years in ERP. And I think, we have seen, so basically two major shifts in software paradigms. So if you think about the late 90s, when enterprise resource planning as an ERP basically became on vogue, software was basically all around processes. So it was built on a paradigm to map processes of an organization into software, and then try to train people as long as it takes, that they're able to use it. So these process-centric solutions. So this was a little bit the age, of the leveling at the super user, the power users. Not many people were basically able to use it since it was pretty complicated. And then, as more and more people started to increase the utilization of these ERP systems, and they, boost productivity, the focus shifted from, creating this, what I call the first thing, process-driven software, to more user-centric software. And I think this was leading to another paradigm shift in software, how you build applications. How do you move from process to user-centric? So more attention was put about the design of the software, having the end user in mind, not the process in mind. And so this was also, of course, the age of early internet, mobile applications, fighting for market dominance. So, we have seen this shift from process-centric to user-centric, and I think we are now again in a new era, also the third shift, and see, I would say, another massive disruption, and it's all about software which is built around data, and I call it the data-centric. So we're moving from process-centric to user-centric, and I think now we're in the area of data-centric. And I would like to explain today a little bit, what data-centric means, and how the Microsoft Cloud provides, the stack to deliver on this new area, and then go into a concrete example, how basically this is shaping also the future of finance. So with that, I think a lot was already said. Just want to introduce myself briefly, as I have been 25 years in the ERP CRM platform space, delivered so the first machine learning driven processes in sales and customer service. So this was pretty exciting to apply, AI machine learning into enterprise processes, and spend most of the time in Germany and California, I guess, as you can hear from my accent, and moved then to Seattle when I joined Microsoft, and leading the engineering teams and product teams for finance, project operations, human resources, and the globalization portfolio. So, but let's talk about data. So if you want to paint basically, the picture of your business, it's basically data. So up until now, if a business was leveraging data, that meant data that supports, for example, a single slice of a function, like a sales team could use sales-related data to improve strategies, for converting leads into customers. But basically, what you're missing out then is the whole interconnectedness across your business. So if you basically would imagine if you could track, factual data like zip codes for areas that are reopening, if staying in the pandemic scenario, or so that the operations team basically know when and where to reopen, and combine this with observational data from sensors, could be sensors inside your stores, and show how many people are actually shopping, so that your HR department knows how much stuff basically they have to bring, and commerce teams basically know what's the inventory and how much do you need where. So everyone can observe finance data for revenue spikes, to see where spending is back to normal and not, or like fraud teams can observe all these insights and prepare for in-store fraud, and marketing teams can tailor messages across social media, respond to behavioral data that expresses how people are responding to new store merchandising. So basically, if you can link the entire organization with data, and that's basically what can really drive growth. I know it sounds like something which is very difficult to achieve, but I think this is now possible. And basically possible, I wanted to also explain what this means and what you basically need to deliver on this, what I call data-centric applications. And Microsoft has worked with customers and partners to basically redefine this paradigm shift to data-first applications, and provided all these building blocks in what they basically call the Microsoft Cloud. So you will always have I call it the benefit of our biggest bets. So these are the apps are part of a strategy and our growth story. So we have invested in building Azure over decades, so our customers can quickly unlock the benefits of the cloud. So the entire infrastructure basically you need to run a digital business is basically there. And also and I think I'm not now over exaggerating, but the billions of dollars Microsoft has spent in artificial intelligence, machine learning, mixed virtual realities, all these benefits of that will basically end up in the technology, we can use every day. And these breakthroughs basically will make it into everybody's hands. And as an additional one, of course, there's then all this set of applications like the whole Dynamics 365 family. They were built to live alongside with customer engagements, with apps from business insights. So this whole entire portfolio, powered with the innovations we have, the research, and of course always the backbone is the infrastructure. And then, of course, a very important addition is, of course, all these apps are powered by the Power Platform. That's where basically, the whole data modeling takes place, the business intelligence takes place. So that's basically where you can build your custom apps, your automated processes. And then last, but for sure not least, of course, everything is tied together with the productivity and collaboration tools, because all these processes are, they're not stopping in departments. People have to work together, collaborate to basically get things done. So you heard, basically about data first or data-centric approach, And this of course goes for the entire ecosystem, what I just shared. So, and in addition to that, the way we have built these tools are, completely agile and extensible. So, I always say that, we can do basically the last mile in the same environment and really then tailor it to customer needs. So let's apply this now to this bigger vision into the space of finance. And this is not just one example, and of course, finance is dear to my heart, but it applies to sales, to service, or to marketing, to supply chain. Just wanted to use finance as one example. How does this, what I explained, data first, the whole Microsoft cloud stack, how does this basically shape the future of finance? So in this, many meetings, I'm able to, connect with customers, with the community, always try to understand what is so top of mind of a CFO, of a finance leader, and just wanted to, share a little bit the thoughts, I have collected, which then of course is also shaping a little bit what we are trying to do in finance. So, one thing is there's new business model out there, there's new revenue models, anything is a service, usage, consumption-based models, etc. And the question is, am I really taking advantage and transforming my business? So big thing CFOs are thinking about. Or another one is, moving from data silos to integrated insights. I need to make decisions in near real time. Am I divesting in the right products and services? Can I effectively guide my CEO where to invest or where to divest? Do I have all these data-driven insights to make these decisions? Or another one is, am I protecting the business against internal, external fraud? And am I exposed to compliance liabilities? Of course, specifically in finance, a big risk right now. And then just another one, am I able to really fully embrace these new technologies? How do I lay the foundation to extract the value from artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics, blockchain, and how can these new technologies basically help me to reduce workload, which would then, of course, allow finance departments to become more strategic. So it's just a couple of things, so finance departments, CFO, finance leaders are basically thinking about and really try to find solutions out there. And, taking this business point of view and all these exponential improvements in technology, I think this is very nicely painting the future of finance. And just wanted to give you a little bit the view from the Microsoft side as how do we see finance will be shaped in the future. And again, based on the technology I explained, based on so the thought processes finance leader have. Also in finance, the function is really shifting away from what we call transactional employees completing tasks to more like strategic partnering, aiming to add value across the organization. Also for people who are familiar with finance, as finance is a very transactional oriented process where you key in data into the system. But of course, there's a huge opportunity out there to really automate these things and then give time to do more the strategic forward-looking things. And so as they basically tackle finance challenges, of course, then these whole roles and responsibilities are shifting and how they measure success. So finance, I think, will have a bigger stake in decision making throughout the whole enterprise. So CFOs becoming more and more influential in decision making. And so what does this basically now mean? And just give you a couple of examples in the context of finance solutions. So for example, the first one, as data is searching, finance is moving away from strategic and backward looking reporting to basically drive perspective, insights, and acting upon from anywhere. There's processing large structured, unstructured amount of data. We have the common data models, governance, and basically you have access, from anywhere and everywhere to your data. Another thing how, the future will look like is, financial transactions, they will be generated and almost like touchless. So exceptions are basically then solved with, notifications, user collaboration, with internal, external partners. So again, there's this collaboration aspect. So like, there's also new ways how you interact with systems, like chatbots, natural language queries, like, you know, just asking what is the credit balance for XYZ, or show me the profit margin by product year over year starting from 2010. So I think it will be much easier, you know, to access software to get the information out of the software. And finance almost becomes real time. If you remember, a couple of years ago, you close your books maybe once a year, then it goes once to a quarter. Most of the company are doing it now already, you know, monthly, and you know, other ones are want to go to what they call real-time close. They always want to know, understand where the business basically is. Another aspect, you know, as finance partners, you know, across the whole organizations, are responsible to establish these new business models, as we talked before, with subscription economy. So basically, they're moving beyond all these legacy systems out there, which are maybe not in the same shape like these modern solutions, which are data-centric. So they're using, you know, tools like robotic process automation, you know, to basically stitch them together and create these new business models. And then, of course, finance, I think we rely really heavily on process automation. So if process automation has a potential, I would say the biggest one is in finance, since there is, you know, so much transactions and so many manual processes, and you know, everything which is manual at the end is error prone and inefficient. So I think there's a huge potential to do something there. And last but not least, just wanted to highlight one more. You know, as I think there's a whole maybe notion as I call it, like finance as a service, which becomes kind of an operational model for an enterprise. So away from finance as a silo, as I normally know, hey, there's this finance department, and then they do their stuff, the number crunching, to more like an openness to support new service delivery models, openness to, you know, serve, integrate with partner solutions, you know, automation services, robots. Is a kind of a synthesis of technology basically and people inside, but also outside the organization, because all these areas are getting more and more specific. So with that, so just want to come a little bit, you know, from how we see the future of finance with the technology disruptions. So how does this basically now shape a little bit, you know, our thinking? So let's get a little bit more concrete into finance. And here I just wanted to summarize it. And if I put it like in a nutshell, like, you know, headlines. So how can we help customers to automate transactions? And then intelligently basically only route exceptions, you know, to finance business users, so they basically can resolve it in collaboration ways. How can we basically provide data-driven insights, you know, to plan, to forecast, to simulate? And you see a little bit along, you know, the planning horizon. So what we have basically planned there. So if I just briefly go over the slide, as you see here, the bigger buckets here in the black area. So this is basically what I outlined. As we're doing a lot basically in how can we help to generate these data-driven insights. You know, how can we basically deliver tools for the subscription economy? So we're working on the subscription billing suite. How can we get rid of, you know, the manual inefficient processes, also the whole process automation framework, and then of course the whole compliance and regulatory updates we're doing. And you see on the top here, so a couple of things we have basically in our pipeline already out there. And I know that I think after my presentation, April Olsen is presenting. Also she will spend, I think, an hour on automation, and hence I wanted to spend a little bit more time on the insights part. Also again, you know, we are trying to help to automate, free up time, and then the question is, what are you doing with this time as a finance department? And that's what I want to focus on a little bit, to give you a little bit of a glimpse. How does this really look then in the product? So if we go again a little bit deeper now into the product. So I wanted to give you one example on making our vision more concrete and show you how it basically looks like in a product. So I wanted to almost talk a little bit about what we call lateral thinking, which basically means that there's so much innovation out there which happened in the last 10, 15 years, if it's artificial intelligence, if it's, you know, big data, cloud, access from anywhere. and lateral thinking basically means I don't think we have to now again invent something completely new. It's really more like, how do we now take all these components, these innovations, and bring them into, for example, in my case, finance. As I said, you can apply this to other things. So it's really more like, how do you now really leverage all these technologies out there and really shape the future of these business processes? So we want to basically, deploy these disruptive technologies in our application and make the benefit accessible to everyone. So you don't have to be now a data scientist, to be part of the future of finance. And that's what I wanted to highlight a little bit here, just to set the stage. Also, we call it like democratization of AI in the context of finance. As it's really, and I will show it then to you, it should be really simple to, again, deploy these machine learning models based on the data you have in your system. Then, of course, you want to consume these insights we are generating in your user interface. And in case you are not happy with the accuracy or you have additional data, you basically want very easily extend these models. So I always call it like, our approach is always like an end model. It's not like a no-but model, which basically means, you have, with most of the solution, you can either take it or leave it. This is the insights, the machine learning model, which generates results. If you don't like it, you basically have to start from scratch, take the data out, get maybe a big consulting firm to massage the data, to train the data, to put some insights there. But basically, you're doing this then in parallel to your existing system. So we are saying you get all these insights from us. But in addition, if you want to enhance it, you can basically take the same tools, also the Power Platform, the same models, and just enhance them in a very easy way. So I wanted to maybe show you one example. Also, I have prepared for you guys, and it's about payment predictions. So at the end, I always say at the end, cash is king. What this basically means for every company, and for sure now in the unprecedented times we are, maybe the most important question is, when will I get paid? Yeah, so when do I get basically cash that I can do something with it? And we looked at this customer problem, as you can see it here on the slide. So based on these statements, we were thinking, how can we help in finance, with the data we have, and do some predictions around there. Like these problems I've stated here, collection processes are, starting too late. It's a manual process. How do you prioritize which collections you are processing first? If you don't know when you get paid, how do you forecast your cash flow? So how do you then avoid that? Maybe, I have to take now a short-term loan, which of course at the end has a very high interest rate to pay. So how can you basically make this whole thing, I would call it, more predictable? So let me show it to you. Give me 1 second, just have to get the system on the screen. So I hope you can see my my system, the finance system. So basically, this is not a very exciting screen, but that's basically the whole point of it. If you want to leverage machine learning, data-driven insights, that's all you have to do. You're just going, into your system. You go into the configuration screen, and you can basically turn on the feature that you would like to leverage these insights. And there's not really much to decide on. Also, if you then want to train the models, of course, you can basically define what very late means in the context of this system, but that's at the end it from an input perspective. Also, the data is in the system already. Of course, we know our data structures. We have the platform, as I explained before, from Azure, from the whole data layer, from Power Platform, all the tools. So basically everything is there. You don't have to worry about it. So the only thing you have to basically in there is that you want to now train this model based on your data. Yeah? So what the system basically is now doing, it takes all the historical data on the payments in your system and tries to find, of course, patterns and prediction models which then will be exposed in the UI. So when the system is then basically ready, it gives you a certain accuracy. That's what I meant before. Of course, the accuracy depends a little bit on the data you have in your system. I would say normally the more data you have, as a more, I mean, the longer time periods you have, the better the models. So therefore, this may be something difficult if you would just, start after 1 week of having data in your system. These models might not be very accurate. And then basically with this information, I want to show you now what does it now mean from an end user perspective. So this is our customer credit and collection screen, and wanted to get your attention on these two additional tiles here. So there is one where it says 6 customers predicted to pay late, and then there's another one which says 558 transactions predicted to be late. And I wanted to focus on this one to explain you the predictions you basically get out of the box in the system. So if you then go into the transaction review of this, you can then see the transactions and the probability we're talking about of the payment. And then on the right side here, I think, which is still very important, we give you also the insights and we try to explain why these predictions are as they are. So I still think there's a certain hesitancy, in accepting out-of-the-box predictions. It's a little bit like, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years ago, or maybe even 20 years ago, I don't even know exactly. But, in the first times of navigation systems in the car, you saw people using the navigation system, but there was still somebody looking at the map, because I'm not sure if I really trust this system yet. Yeah? But I would say right now, nobody's doubting the proposed routes of a navigation system. And I think we're also a little bit in the beginning of this machine learning driven insights that people still want to know, why is it as it is. So therefore you can see, also here's the prediction for this transaction, what the probabilities are for the payment. You can see then the factors which are most heavily impacting these predictions. Then we also have a lot of insights for this customer, so you don't have to now jump back and forth, to make decisions. You see the open invoices, late invoices, cases, activities, late payments. We also have information about the credit limits. You have in addition, and then there's also a nice summary of the whole customer history. So this should normally give the collection agents all the information you need to make your decisions. And we're also working basically on additional ideas how we can make this whole collection process much more automated. And what I mean is, it's a little bit like what we're doing in marketing. In marketing, we have the same machine learning algorithms. How do you, at the end, convince somebody to buy a product? Yeah. So what is the best way to engage with people? Is it, social media? Is it email campaigning? So there's a lot of these kind of patterns you can use from the past, and at the end, collection is the same thing. How do I convince somebody to pay me? So this whole idea of how do you use these patterns of, okay, if this customer is normally always late, so I don't have to bother them and call them 10 times and then upset them, or these customers normally don't react on emails, they just react on phone calls. So all these collection strategies, the system could also automatically generate. And then last but not least, what I want to show when we talked about the extend model. So now if you basically go into the Power App, you basically just see, these are I call them all the data features, as it's called in machine learning, which are feeding the machine learning model. And again, here you could then just select maybe additional fields, because in the context of a business, they're more important, or it could also be external data, and then just, retrain the model. And again, what you see, you would have the same screens. You don't have to worry about the user interface. You just retrain it and can consume basically the same predictions and base the decision on. So this is what I wanted to show you in the context of the payment predictions. And just to summarize what I wanted to try to do, as it's a little bit, I wanted to take you on a journey. So the first one was, I think there's a new software paradigm we're entering. I call it data-centric, as we're moving from process-centric to user-centric and now to data-centric. The Microsoft Cloud delivers, the full stack you need to build and deliver these data-first applications. Sometimes I call it a little bit, the iOS for enterprise applications. It's a real end-to-end full stack, which creates a lot of trust, specifically in finance, because you're in full control from the infrastructure level to the data level to the modeling layer to the application layer. And these data applications, data-first applications, they're built by Microsoft, they're built by our partners and our customers. And as a last stop, wanted to apply this thinking to, shape a little bit the future of finance. And if you are thinking about, hey, finance sounds interesting, we have also a great community out there. So if you think, future finance, pretty cool, then please join, and we can continue the conversation. And thanks for spending time with me today. And I think we have time for some questions in case there are some. So I would hand it back, I don't know to whom, but to the moderator maybe, to see how we can do the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Georg. Yes, definitely. There are questions. In fact, some of the MVPs have questions as well. So I think first up is Dr. Ludwig.
Yeah. Hey, Russ. Yeah. Thank you. I actually have a question for Georg.
Yeah.
Georg, if I put myself a couple of years back, when I finished my what we call, I think in Austria you call it Matura or A levels.
Matura, yeah, no, that's correct. It's Matura.
Yeah. Before you study, if you put yourself into this situation, what would you recommend a student to look out for? What subject would you study if you see all this cloud, this BI, this artificial intelligence? What would be your recommendation?
No, it's a very good question, and we had a conversation just last week about it. Maybe and again, I'm not saying that I have planned it, but from my background, I always try to go basically broad, but also at least deep to a certain kind of level. So I started informatic, then I, in addition, started electronics, because I always want to understand, how you program a computer, but also how do you build a computer. So I wanted to avoid these kind of situations where, I know software, but if the computer is not plugged into the power supply, I have to call somebody. And then at the end, I thought, hey, I want to understand how do you make money. So then I did an MBA, and at least when I was in this age, the whole mobile thing was taking off. So I also did an additional academic degree in what they call telecommunication networks and network protocols. This was the whole way, how do these networks communicate? And then again, this long life living, long life learning
Hello, Sahib, do you have a question? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, hello.
I'm good. Unfortunately, I was signed out. I signed back in.
And so your question for Georg?
No, I'm okay. That was pretty good session. Quite informative.
Thank you.
Excellent. And there is a question actually. I have a question, and it's a bit linked to. It is a bit linked to Dr. Ludwig's question. It's actually linked more to, as a community, where our efforts should be focused. So my question really to yourself really is, what would you expect from the community to help bring better awareness around this product? As you know, the community is all about sharing knowledge and addressing gaps. That's our main focus. So, for example, one of the things that I've been personally involved in is building open source utilities for Dynamics, and a lot of the community out there build these tools and utilities to close the gap. But my question is, are there any opportunities, or is there anything that we should be doing more to help facilitate the growth of the finance community?
So I think, as I said at the beginning, I'm a strong believer that the community is the backbone of getting the message out, getting the success, and making it happen. Because in these days, there is no company basically who can scale, in this speed to make it happen. Yeah? So I think the community is really the basis of making sure that people are aware, that people know how to do it, and maybe can also lean in to understand, what to do. Also the one thing is, of course, how do we get, when I say we, Microsoft, how do we get the information out? So I think hopefully these sessions are helpful. Of course, this is maybe a little bit one way, but at least I'm getting the things out, and at least I'm then also engaged in other sessions where we can do this Ask Me Anything sessions. But how do we get also the feedback into our engineering departments and product departments to also make sure that this knowledge which sits in a community also helps us to do the right things. I think that's from my perspective the most important thing, because at the end it's, I guess, always a little bit difficult. I don't know what I don't know. This maybe is the biggest problem right now in this era, that there's so much know-how out there. So I would say there's maybe an answer for every question, but if you don't find it, I think that's the biggest challenge. So if we can continue this intensified and also make sure that we have this closed loop of, of course, you are telling us how to get the knowledge out, but then we're also making sure that how do we get, this massive knowledge the community has back into, at the end, an engineering team or a product management team who then decides what to do. I think this is something we, I guess, over time have to learn, as I don't have now the perfect solution. So I would say this is anyway already a very impressive community. So I think you guys are doing everything right. Also, can we learn over time and make it better? I'm sure. Yeah, this is a learning process. But I think how do we stay connected? Do we have the right tools to make this almost like a real-time experience? Also, not like, it's not once a year, it's not once a quarter. How do we really basically get real-time feedback on things we are doing, the community is doing? I think that's maybe something we could think about and doing, but it's from my point of view absolutely important. Yeah? So otherwise, other companies really based their success on a community. So that's basically how they grew. Yeah? So it's almost like a new way of doing things. Yeah?
Thank you, Georg. There is another question, and it's definitely, again, related to the community. One thing we've noticed as a community is there are many, many professionals from accounting backgrounds that their jobs have been disrupted. They are now becoming consultants versus accountants. They're becoming business application consultants versus accountants, and so we're getting lots of an influence of many professionals who are accountants or from other technologies such as some of the other financial service applications out there that are showing a massive interest in the Dynamics stack, especially finance and operations and Business Central. My question to you is, and it's a bit linked again to Dr. Ludwig's question, is these professionals, what can we do to really help them to really learn finance a lot quicker, because they're simply transitioning from their accounting backgrounds and they're starting to deliver a lot more value by becoming business application consultants versus just traditional accountants. Could you share some feedback on your insight about this?
No, it's a great question. It's a little bit, when I think I had it at one of the thoughts of CFOs, things they really have to think about is, how do I, of course, have the right skills, but how do I also help my staff to move from where they are to where they should be? And there is a shift in know-how needed in this, let's call it, future of finance. And I think there's two things. Of course, the one thing is you are changing sites and going into, as you said, more the consulting point of view. But I would say the source of everything is that specifically now in COVID, the whole automation for transactional processes will just accelerate. So that's my opinion. I don't think there is a way back, because nobody wants to depend on manual processes where people have to do things if you don't know what the next big thing is. So this whole automation of, which was maybe a big task of accountants, is, how do I get all these invoices, all this information into data so that at the end, I can run my balance sheet or my P&L. But I don't think this really is necessary more, because you can really automate this stuff. And at the end, of course, there will always be things you have to consider. There will be exceptions. Maybe things are wrong or missing, or it's then more complex in how to reconcile. So you will just work on these exceptions. And at the end, the knowledge I think accountants within a company should build up is, of course, how do you use these new tools? As I showed, of course, we make them very easy, but it's more focused on, I don't want to report and key in data for the past. I want to basically help to shape the future. It's really more like, how do I, of course, you have to understand finance. There's no way of saying I don't understand finance, as you have to understand finance. But the things you're doing it's more like, how do you plan? How do you simulate? How do you work with business units out there and do it together to understand what's the business impact? What are these business models? How do they impact finance? So I think there's a much more, I still would call it, interesting space where you apply finance. And again, this is a little bit to the beginning, finance and other knowledge things you have to have. You have maybe to talk with supply chain specialists. You have to maybe talk with sales guys who understand how these business models will impact customer behavior. As all these cross things in collaboration, I think that's the interesting space where you are. And of course, the same thing applies if you do this maybe as a consultant, as you're saying, hey, I understand finance. I also understand how these new technologies will disrupt finance and help customers to, to make this move. And I think I also mentioned it. I think also in finance, it will be a finance department, but you will together then work with outside consultants. I don't think, you will have all this knowledge inside your company. Maybe if you're a very large corporation, yes. But I think also in finance now, since they're very specialized fields, as if you just take topics like Brexit or all these things, it's very difficult to understand that China says, hey, my data has to stay in there, and Russia has their own definitions. There's so many specialized fields where I think you then again have to collaborate and solve this together. And again, you need the platforms for this, you need the systems, you need the compliance models on top so that this doesn't go wrong. So I think that's, again, Microsoft is delivering, but then on top, everything, I think the business know-how and these collaboration models, I would say these are the future of
Sahib, did you have a question?
Yes, I got a question. This was a great session again. But my question is, because I worked with some of the projects which were on-prem as well, not just with the cloud. So it's just an honest feedback or something.
Huh?
I understand that the same technology and everything like machine learning and everything cannot be applied with the projects of on-prem. But what I have observed over the months or years that we do not get so much into the projects of on-prem as we get into the cloud. So what's the prospect of Microsoft? What's the thoughts of Microsoft for the future of on-prem? Will will this be removed altogether, or will support will be there?
I think it's a very good question, and I mean the things I outlined. I mean, unfortunately, they're only possible because there is a cloud. So there is a delivery model of doing updates almost continuously in the system. So we are running all in the cloud. At least we're all sharing the same, I said, code base. So all these innovations are much faster now than in the on-premise times. And again, if you train a model, the training of a machine learning model is very resource intensive. So in an on-premise model, you don't want to have this huge machine and then you train it, and then at the end, when you just use it, you need like 1% of the capacity. So basically, the whole benefits of infrastructure as a service are just making it possible so that everybody can consume it. So I mean, of course, I mean our hope is that the value proposition of the cloud is so strong that on-premise customers, I think they are in a process, or they will be in a process of thinking, there is a point in time where I have to move from on-premise to the cloud. I mean, of course, this will take years. And I would say the compromise, at least what I have seen, is that customers maybe say, I still keep my on-premise systems, maybe in certain countries, but at least I start with one cloud system. If it's now, for example, finance or supply chain, if I at least want to get visibility across all my systems, and use this as a kind of a consolidation system. Also, we also have, I don't know if you saw it maybe on the slide, we're also thinking about the concept, what we call like an accounting hub. So you could then bring the data from your on-premise systems, from your cloud systems together. So at least we're bringing the data together. And at the end, if you have the data, you can then again apply all these things I just showed to you, if it's prediction models. But it would be like a two-stage process, maybe saying, yes, the transition from on-premise to the cloud will take years. But I think everybody has to go there. And, in CRM, this started 10 years ago, HR maybe 5 years ago, but now I think ERP is also on a massive shift into the cloud. So if you want to stay competitive as a company, I think that's what you have to do. And in this transition, I would say there is a possibility to say, use these new technologies in a cloud model, and then bring the data in from on-premise models. And of course, over time, hopefully you can switch off the on-premise systems and you will be then in a cloud-only environment. So that's a little bit how I would see it. Yeah.
One thing more which comes to my mind. You see this another software which is growing very fast, Business Central. And now if you see, it has got a lot of features. It has got production, it has got finance. It's not as big as AX or Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations. But do you think at any point it will become as larger as AX?
Also, I mean, Business Central just addresses a different segment. So Dynamics is not now addressing I call it now the mom and pop shops, where you have whatever, a couple of users, and you're doing the end-to-end processes in a very standardized way. I mean, if you are running a very small business, you're not worried about how do you differentiate in your supply chain or in your finance processes. Also, you want to have it out of the box, you want to have it easy, you want to just use it, and maybe even outsource it. Say, hey, why do I have to run it if somebody can do finance for me? And there's limitations to it. So I think there is a hard line. Of course, I mean, the hard line is maybe a little bit blurry, but there's a hard line of where Business Central makes sense. And then when you get more complex, if you start to be, international, more subsidiaries, more tailored processes, then, the Dynamics portfolio is basically the right solution. But of course, Dynamics is then at the end also too expensive for very small mom and pop shops. So therefore, these are two offerings which will stay there, and they have their different purpose. And of course, I mean, there's integration scenarios. Maybe you have some small subsidiaries who are running on Business Central and then corporate runs on Dynamics. But at the end, I think the segment they're addressing are very different.
Thank you, Georg. There's one final question. Do you have time for one final question?
I do.
Okay, so Andreas has a question. So Andreas, I'm going to unmute you. Please feel free to ask your question.
Yeah, thank you. This is Andreas from Munich. And hello, Georg. Georg, there's a lot of noise around the term of process mining in ERP industry. I saw the RISE announcement from SAP and was thrilled about the announcement of Signavio. And so, just a month ago, you also mentioned process mining in the last announcement. So I'm very keen to know if there's anything to share, how maybe you may intend to bring the process mining capabilities or by yourself or by partnering with somebody to the Dynamics world.
Thank you. Great question. Also my personal interest I'm working on. Also I think the whole process mining, task mining, I think that's a huge opportunity and specifically again in the context of finance, because there's so many processes and supply chain and maybe also customer service. What we have started from Microsoft perspective is also we are working with Celonis. I mean, I guess you know them in Munich, the German unicorn. Also they have basically built their success on process mining over the last 10 years, and they're a big play out there. Yeah? So that's also one model we have. I don't know if you maybe saw it. I was on the Celonis Sphere event where we showed a couple of scenarios how Celonis and Microsoft Dynamics basically integrate, and you can do this process analysis, and that's a very compelling case. And again, specifically if you go back to the on-premise conversation, also what we are using it for is to show on-premise customers, these are your existing processes. If you understand the deficiencies in your processes, the money you're losing, and you move to the cloud and have the capabilities to change that, it's almost like a self-funding move. Yeah? That's a little bit the marketing message. Yeah? Just understanding, hey, these are your processes, this is basically the money you're losing, this is how you can change it. And what we are basically working on with Celonis is how can you make this a real-time thing. Yeah? So right now this process analysis is like, you take the data out, you analyze your processes, again, you pay a lot of money for very smart consultants to tell them what to do, and then you bring it into your system. But this is almost like maybe it's a year cycle for complex companies. Yeah? So what we are basically working is, so how do you take real-time insights of whatever your sales, outstanding recommendations in the systems, what you have to change, directly bring the system and start a continuous loop again against benchmarks, and just again bring exceptions, to your attention. Whatever your cash flow is going down because of this and these things. So that's a little bit the vision. Yeah? And so there's so many players in this field. We have also other partners, but I would say in the large enterprise, Celonis is a big one. But Microsoft itself, of course, we have the tools also to do that. And Microsoft right now is focused on task mining, which I think is an interesting piece too, because on the one side, process mining means I can tell in the system, how your ordering process works. But you don't really know, why does it take the person to enter something into the system 2 days? So basically what Microsoft right now is focusing on is task mining. And task mining basically, as we're using the tools like robotic process automation, is we're trying to understand what is the end user doing basically in the system, and is it sending 20 emails back and forth because they don't get the information. That's the reason why it takes 2 days. And if you combine in process mining and task mining, I think you get a really full picture. But at least what I can say is that this is a extremely important thing. We are working with the Power Platform on this, and we will deliver more and more things out of the box and part of the system there. And again, this is a huge space where partners will always have then a great play to industry-specific stuff, ready models and these kind of things. But the core of understanding your processes and tasks, I think that's a very, very interesting piece for the future.
Thank you, Georg. There are some questions left, but obviously we're not going to keep you. We will carry on with them later. We just want to thank you so much for taking your time out. I know you've got a very busy schedule to spend that time with the community today and give us an idea of what to expect and where we're heading. So thank you once again, Georg, for spending your time with us today.
No, thank you. It was great to be here. And if there's additional questions, and if you can send them to me, I can also try to answer and somehow bring it back to the community if this is an option.
Awesome. That would be really, really good.
Excellent. Then, yeah, thank you for the invitation. And I think next is automation anyway, yeah, with April, I think, if I remember the.
Yeah, we are here.
Oh, she's already here. Okay, great. Thanks a lot. Good luck. Bye-bye.
Hello. Hello, it's April.
Yes, hello.
Well, thank you, April, for joining us. We're all excited to we were looking forward to a session from yourself, April. Everyone, all the MVPs were asking, you know, we need April to do a really great presentation, and here you are. So thank you again. Thank you, Fawad, and thank you, Sonia, and everyone for making this happen. So April, are you able to share your screen?
Yes, I am. Let me just make sure everybody is on. I think we're waiting for one more person. Ryan is on. He'll be a co-presenter and Annette. So let me get the screen share up. Are you able to see it? It says automation has been top of mind.
Yes, we can see that. Yep.
Okay, and in presentation mode, right?
That's presentation mode now. Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. Are we ready to go, or do we want to wait one more minute?
Wait a minute. I can see your teams.
Okay.
Some...
Also, I must have not shared the PowerPoint. I was just making sure Annette was joining here. So let me just to make sure. Power. How is that? Does that look better? You still see that okay?
Yeah, looks good on the full screen PowerPoint.
Okay, cool. All right, I was just pinging Annette, Ryan. So maybe while I cover a few slides, you can kind of figure. Great. All right, well, thanks for having us today. So what we want to talk about today is automation. Automation's been in top of mind for a very long time, and we're really starting to see how impactful it can be. And so today, what we want to cover is myself and Ryan Carlson and Annette, all product managers from the Dynamics 365 finance team, are going to talk to you about finance automation. And we're going to do a variety of slides to share some of the investments that we've done, but we're also going to go ahead and do quite a bit of demo today so you can actually see the investments that are happening. And so you can kind of see how you can take advantage of them and hopefully have some time for Q&A and to provide feedback. So what we're seeing is 40% of transactional accounting work may be automated or eliminated by robots in 2020, by 2020. And that's past, that's last year. And with the pandemic, if you talk to analysts, all the questions that they've even been getting has been around automation, automation, automation. What are they doing? Who's doing it? How are they doing it? And so our team has been heavily investing in this in the last year. And really the goal of automation for us is to automate that happy path, get your users out of doing manual transactions, manual work, so they can spend more time devoting attention to anomalies, things that don't match the happy path. And that has been our goal and our focus. And some of you have maybe even been involved in providing feedback on it. And so that is something we want to thank you for, and we're excited to share the outcomes of that today. So when we think about automation, and this is something we definitely wanted to cover, is there's really different forms of automation. We've got UI automation, so where we're doing RPA, automating different actions on the UI, maybe across different applications. And then we've got digital process automation, doing different approvals and business rules and to manage that aspect. And then we also have an aspect where we bring UI, using artificial intelligence with automation to turn any of those different workflows and rules into structured and unstructured data into actions. So there's really three great ways that Microsoft Dynamics is bringing this to you. And one is today we're going to talk mostly about what we're calling more native finance automation. But thinking about the breadth of our platform, Power Automate is the way that you can also do anything additionally as well if you have things coming in from another internal system, external system, or so on. And so really we feel positioned as an organization to be in the best position to offer automation to you versus any other player out there. So how do we apply it within Dynamics 365 Finance? So again, just for the sake of this presentation, I'm going to call this kind of native finance process automation. And what benefits are you getting from that? So in the last 8 to 9 months, our team has been focused on automating the different areas that you see on the screen. Vendor payments, so thinking about, that's something you do all the time. That is something that can absolutely be automated. You can set up those different schedules and those different rules so that you can pay those vendors and then have those AP clerks work on other aspects of it. GL transfers, vendor invoice posting, and that's going to be something that we spend quite a bit of time demonstrating you today, is all of our investments around vendor invoice automation. And as part of that includes matching, so you're not spending time doing that manual matching. And then kind of moving through that whole cash flow scenario. If you think about that, you've paid vendors, and you've got invoices coming in, you've paid them. Now how about receiving money? And that's where we started to actually automate the entire incoming process around accounts receivable, adding automation around collections tasks and collections emails. We like to refer to them as a collection strategy because you can really get very deep in how you want to set up your different categories and rules to bring those collections in and automate that aspect. I think the really cool thing is if you think about that diagram I just showed you with the AI, that's where we're going next. We've got an intelligent cash flow forecasting solution that's out in private preview. And again, besides being able to predict when things are going to be paid, predict how you want to pay your vendors and how that's going to impact your cash position, it's great to have that insight, but really what we want to do is be able to take action to change that for the better. And that's where we are going to be combining intelligence, so our AI, with some of these things like collections, so that now based on the predictions we're getting from the machine learning, that's also a key player into these collections as well. So we're really taking automation, but also saying, hey, now let's take intelligence as well and drive action from it for the better. And that, I think, is just something that any organization, regardless of their business, would absolutely benefit from. So this is the area that I was referring to, where we're going to have a mix of intelligence and automation. So I've kind of covered those first three about how we're using that intelligence there, but we're also adding a level of intelligence into our invoice automation. So what we will demo today is going to be what is already available out in the market, but then what's next? What's next is if you follow all what the Microsoft Azure Cognitive Services team is doing, is they have an OCR solution that is out in preview right now, where you as an organization can take that OCR solution and build your own model that's kind of training on those vendor invoices coming in. Okay. Obviously, there's a lot of opportunity for us to utilize that great work that that team is doing. And that is something that, we are looking at is, okay, you can do that already today. How can we add even more value to what that team has added? And so that's really where we'll be going next. And you're probably asking, well, how is that intelligent? Well, if you think about it, any solution out there today has a model where you have your invoices coming in. And what if you get something that's different? What if you get a new style of invoice, a new field, something that's not recognized? that is still manual work. That stops the automation process for you. And with cognitive services, they will allow you as an organization to make that change, and then the model retrains. So if you're thinking about it now, we've got intelligence with automation, but continuously training and updating. So we like to say continuous intelligent automation. And it's really where we are going next to bring you all this great value. So as an introduction, I wanted to share where we've been, where we're going, and now we want to actually show you what we have already for you to take advantage of today. So I'm going to hand it over to Ryan. He's going to give you an overview of the process automation experience, and then we will go right into a great demo on invoice automation. So Ryan, I'll hand it over to you. If you want to go ahead and either tell me to click or take over the screen if you're going to be demoing, that would be great.
Sure. We'll start with the next slide. Is kind of a quick look at where we started in the project for some of the automation work, and there's a framework that exists kind of as just a layer around the batch job recurring processes that you can set today in any given batch job that you schedule in D365 today. So some of the problems that people might run into is simply there's a very wide open ability to do anything you would like here. For example, the green wording at the bottom says fine grained scheduling options. So if I have a process that might take an hour or two or longer, and I can make a recurring pattern to recur every minute, obviously that's a problematic situation to get into. And there's several that would be that situation that we feel should not run more than once a day, perhaps. If it's a long running, I just at the end of the day need to update my cash flow numbers. And similarly, we'll look at a demo with the payment proposal. Each day I just need to run a given set of parameters for payment generation. So if I do click OK on this button, you can click the next button. There's a little animation. The next screen that comes into, if I were to submit this, what I get next is, okay, I scheduled a batch job. Now, where is it? And again, if I'm an AP clerk or similar persona in an industry, they don't really need a reason to go into the batch job inquiry form to say, okay, did it complete? Is it still running? Where is it at? That's a challenge. So our project for automation tried to address both of those basic problems that we identified, and hopefully provides a lot more benefit than just solving those two simple problems. You can go to the next slide, and it does have a screen of what we'll get into a demo next on kind of an administration page for that process automation. So now the key thing that we'll look at in the demo is I can schedule something. We've limited the control down on what the schedule can be a little bit, solving that problem. And then where is that work and when's it going to happen? And that's the right-hand side of the screen has the calendar of kind of a daily list of what's happening for a given week. And you can kind of scroll left or right to get to the different weeks where you can see what's coming for the next week, etc. You can take action from this as well. You can see the view and edit and disable buttons that allow you to actually take, given holiday happens on a Monday, you just say, well, I'm going to disable this one. I don't need anything to run that day. Nobody's in the office. So I can simply just take an action, disable that one instance, and let the rest of them continue running with very little effort. So with that, let me take over control. I will share my screen shortly.
Sounds good.
Give it back. So April or others, just let me know when it shows up.
I can see it.
Okay. So this is that same central administration page that I have running. And so from here, this is typically maybe more of an administration persona that's going to look at this page. And they can see all of the automation. They can kind of see what the schedules are, and they can even create new ones. I won't do this quite yet, but here's the list of all the different automations that I have enabled in this system right now. I've just enabled a handful. There's some other ones as well, but we'll focus on the ones that you saw kind of a couple circles in that this previous slide deck that introduced automation. So there's cash flow, automation, and then a vendor payment proposal, and we'll take a look at creating a new vendor payment proposal. But what I can see from this screen is maybe I have a daily update of my cash flow numbers. But in addition to that, if anybody's aware of what cash flow allows, there's a second option that says kind of full rebuild. If you're kind of running a total, I think, in that existing batch job that we converted over to this automation. So now I can say, well, just once a week, and I can see on Sunday it's scheduled to run at 10 p.m. just a full rebuild. So this is that rebuild. I can see here I might have every day at the end of the day. These have completed already. So Thursday and Friday, today's run already happened this morning. So this lets you see that. We'll do another look as we kind of focus in on the vendor payment one. Let's go ahead and create another one, because right now I have US payments that are going to happen every Tuesday and Thursday. I did this just the other day. So it's already completed its Thursday run, and we can drill in. And actually the results gets you right into the journal. Oh, I think this one I deleted that data. So let's create a new vendor payment for, instead of US payments, we'll just say we're going to create a any Euro transactions vendor. Let's create a journal for those on a different scheduled day. So I'm going to change my pattern. Again, we can see I can't do that every minute. That would be unreasonable. But maybe it's all Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays I want to have the Euro payments generated for myself or for the AP clerks. So we'll define that. Oh, I gotta adjust my time. Let's do that just at 9 in the morning every day of those 3 days. And on the next screen, that previous one was just all this existing batch recurrence ability we could do. This screen is specific per each of the processes. We saw those 4 in the drop-down list right away. So for a vendor payment proposal, this is a custom screen to that type of automation that says, okay, when you're running a vendor payment proposal, I need to know specific pieces of data, such as what journal shall we create it for? And these are the other options that payment proposal would require. You know, do you want to fill in and kind of limit it down to particular currency and all the other parameters that are critical for payment proposal to run? So I'll just leave that at the simple query just for the Euro payments. We'll click finish. And that will create a new record in our window. So now I have this Euro line as well. So vendor payments, there's 2 of them. And here I can see, okay, tomorrow, this should continue and pick up and run here. It's scheduled to run. I can scroll forward and I can see all the ones that happen next week as well, and take actions on these individually if I wanted to. The interesting thing that we also found was, let's make this data available in a calendar viewer specific to a role. So payment clerks or people in that role may not need to see cash flow or the credit and collections one that we saw or any of the other ones. They just need to see stuff specific to them. So if I look at the vendor payment workspace, we've enabled the same calendar view here. However, now we can see a little different view. Is they're just interested in all of the vendor payment proposals, so they can see the US payment one that's already completed, and here is the Euro payment one that's executing right now. So this lets them see all of the work that's happening, and then they can drill in and get to the results as it happens. They can even create a single one-off instance, say, I forgot one other thing that needs to happen today. They can do that, create a vendor payment proposal. Again, you can see that's tailored for their role. So they can't create a cash flow one from this instance. It has to be something that's related to this vendor payment workspace, which would be either now the Euro one or the US payment. And they can go through and create an extra one if something was missing. So that's the key benefit here. Along with the 2 problems we described, we also have that role tailored view of that scheduled work. And we've had several I guess customers enjoy the fact that they can now see that scheduled work, because there are some tickets that would come in, they can't see it, so they create another one. Now it's kind of conflicting with each other, and that's caused system problems. So it's been a great win here, have this automation and visible in the UI like this. So I'll leave the rest of the time to go through other automations for Annette. So I will stop sharing here.
Thank you, Ryan. We will bring back to the slide deck. If Raz here is on the phone, we were trying to make Annette a presenter, but she keeps getting bumped back down to attendee. So I'm going to jump to the slide deck. We are going to have her rejoin, but hopefully we can get that issue resolved, since she is a big part of the demo today. So I
Hello.
apologize.
So are they able to join?
She's been able to join, and then I make her a presenter, and then it bumps her back down to an attendee. So she can't unmute, and of course can't share to demo. So we are going to have her dial back in, but she is having some problems getting to be made a presenter.
Okay, we'll make sure that they don't get bumped down. If they're
Okay.
already in the chat, I might be able to add them back in.
Okay, yes, she's back in, but she's still an attendee. So it's Annette
Could you
Brewer.
raise your hand, please, so I can find you?
There she goes. Apologies for the delay. Thank you.
It's fine, yeah. We will get there. We'll get to. We're all excited to. Oh, there you are. There's Annette. Sorry, Annette. There you go. Back to being a presenter. Thank you.
Okay, I am in. Are you able to hear me, April?
We are, yay. All right.
We are. Yes, and my issue right now is I can't see your screen at all if you are presenting, so I'm not able to see anyone.
Okay, we have the vendor invoice automation screen up.
Yes, and that I am not seeing. Let me try to share to see if you can see me.
That would be great.
I do have a copy of the. Are you able to see my desktop?
I can see your desktop. Is everyone else able to?
Yeah, looks good. Yep.
Great. Thank you, Annette.
Okay.
Thanks for navigating that.
I have a copy of the slide here, April, so I will just go through this and start. And please do interrupt me if I drop again. This is the strangest thing. It keeps bumping me down and losing everything here for audio. So just let me know.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. Hello, and thank you so much for your time today. So our goal today really is to introduce you to this new feature set that will automate the accounts payable vendor invoicing processes. So if you look at the slide, the leftmost circle, you can see that we depict a service, and that's external to Dynamics 365 Finance, where invoices are scanned and converted to metadata that can be consumed by our data entities within Dynamics 365. And as you all know, there are several external applications available from our AppSource site that can be used for that transformation outside of Dynamics 365. And then if you look at the line, once we cross that line, then we are receiving the data from right inside the Dynamics 365 Finance. And that's really where this new set of features enable the consumption of these artifacts in Dynamics 365. So really think about this external service as complementary to our new offering, where we work hand in glove. We're taking that metadata and then pushing it through the processes and automatically posting it in that touchless manner. So specifically, the features that we're delivering will enable that straight through touchless processing of the vendor invoice. This process supports purchase order and non-purchase order or category-based service type line items. And you can see a listing of the processes, and most notably, I'll call out the automatic submit of those invoices to workflow and the automated matching of the product receipts to our saved pending vendor invoices. So I'd like to walk you through each of these features that we've listed here in a lot more detail, and we're going to start with the configuration settings just to ensure that you have the best experience with these features. So let me go into the product. And today I'm going to play the role of a typical company that's using an external service to scan their invoices. And then they've sent that scan metadata into Dynamics. And again, that's where our new feature starts. So we'll start at the beginning. And let's go to the feature management workspace just so you can see which feature it is. Go and I'll type in vendor invoice here. and it is the vendor invoice automation feature set. So everything from here on out that I'm talking about is controlled by this particular feature and enabling that. One of the things that you'll need to set up, and I'll show you how I have this set up, but you'll want a workflow in order to have a truly touchless process. I have a very simple workflow that we'll be walking through. I have most of my invoices are automatically being approved. Some are being assigned to me. But the important thing that I want to call out here is that you'll want to have an automated posting element in your workflow. And it can be either the automated task, the post vendor invoices, as I have here, or it can be the posting in a batch. If you use the posting in a batch, one thing that I'll just note is that's also a feature that you'll need to enable if you're going to use that. The difference between the two, of course, is just like any of our other batch processes where this is using the batch, and the other one that I have configured is simply posting them one at a time. So next we'll go into the accounts payable parameters to continue with the setup. And as I had mentioned, there'll be a new tab here, and the two key business processes that we're looking to automate are the automatic submit of those imported invoices to workflow and the matching routines. So let's talk about the first one, the automatic submit to workflow. Now the mechanics behind this is that it enables a background task, and that task is using the framework that Ryan had just talked about. And it's silently listening for those imported vendor invoices. And when they exist, the system can automatically submit the invoice to workflow for further processing. Now, this task can be configured to run either at an hourly or daily frequency of your choosing. And you can additionally opt into whether or not other processes need to be run before the system should attempt to submit these to workflow. So for example, I'll draw your attention to the match product receipts to invoice lines. If I set this to yes, what this will do is it will require that the system first matches the product receipts to invoice lines before it will even attempt to submit it into workflow. So think of this kind of as a chain of events. It allows you to configure your processes. So speaking of that match product receipts automatically, that's that second process. And the mechanics behind this one is that it's looking for any invoice lines that have a three-way matching policy that are not currently matched to product receipts. So again, kind of background on the scenario, of course, is we know that invoices arrive frequently before the goods. So with this process, you can record that invoice, and then the system will just automatically be checking in the background for those posted product receipts. This one, like the first one, can be configured to run at an hourly or a daily frequency as well. Wanted to call your attention as well to the maximum allowed attempts. I have mine set to 2 right now. The way that this works is, think of this as a threshold. So it will run the specified number of times, in my case 2 times, before it marks a process as failed. And the reason it marks it as failed is because at that point, you'll want to have one of your accounts payable clerks intervene and take a look. So in real life practice, let's say in my business, typically my goods arrive, let's say 4 days after the invoice. So I might set this to run, let's say once daily, and I would set my maximum times to attempt my matching to, let's say 5, because normally my goods would be here after 4 days. So if I'm hitting the 5th day, I really want someone to intervene, check with the buyer, have the buyer check with the vendor, see where those goods are. So that's how that works. So we complete the setup by going to the process automation form that Ryan had just shown. So let me go, that's under System Administration, under the Process Automations. And I'll show you the background tasks that we just had set up. So we set up the ability to submit the vendor invoices to workflow as well as that matching routine. Let's just take a peek at how I have this set up. We'll go ahead and edit. couple of things that I wanted to point out. Here is where you set that frequency. I had mentioned earlier it can be hourly or daily. So I could set this to run if I wanted to every 4 hours perhaps. And I could enable the sleep period. As Ryan had mentioned, this is a great framework. We can take advantage of all of the goodness that the framework allows us to have. One of the things I'll point out with this particular scheduled process, the submit vendor invoices to workflow, this user ID will be the user ID that is stamped when the invoice is submitted into workflow. Okay, now that we have our system set up for automation, let's take a look at the results of the automation. And to do that, I'm going to go to the Accounts Payable Vendor Invoice Entry workspace. And this provides a snapshot of the work that lies ahead of the accounts payable clerk. And now it also provides some insight into the automation process. So if you're familiar with our vendor invoice entry workspace that exists today, you'll recognize some of these tiles, but we've added some new tiles. So here you can see on the left side new tiles showing invoices that were not successfully processed automatically. So they need some human intervention. So I've set up the system quite a few weeks ago now. So I have been running the background tasks against my imported invoices. And I have 3 invoices that failed to submit to workflow. So let's take a closer look. And by selecting that tile, you can see we have a list page that provides insight into those invoices that failed to be submitted into workflow. We'll go ahead and highlight one of them, and I'm going to click on a new button, View Automation History. And for this invoice, we show a reverse chronological view of the invoice history. So in this case, it's a timeline dialog that shows how the invoice has moved through our automated processes so far. So here we have an invoice that was imported successfully on December 11th. And then almost immediately it was run through the match product receipt to invoice line. It was not applicable. In this case, I think I had an item that was not subject to 3-way matching on this particular invoice. But then the invoice was submitted into workflow automatically by the system, and it failed. Because it failed, it took it out of automation so that the clerk, myself, could take a look at it. The really nice thing about this is without even opening up the invoice, I can click on the ellipse and I can see why it failed. So let me open up the message log. And in this case, my vendor invoice was on hold. And as you know, you can't submit invoices that are on hold into the workflow process. So that is why that ran into that type of an issue. Now, after this invoice posts, the history is retained. So let's just take a look at that. I'm going to go into the inquiries and look at a posted invoice. I had posted this quite some time ago. Let's just sort by date, and we can take any of these that I did a few months ago. Notice the view automation history is visible. And if I click on this, you get that same form, that same dialog. I can see when it was imported. I can see the processes that it ran through, and that workflow did indeed successfully post this particular invoice. So it's a really great historical audit trail that the invoice took. Let's go back to my workspace. And I can see that there is an invoice that failed to find product receipts within that threshold. So let's just click on that. Here again, I'll point out we have some new columns on these list pages. I'm partaking in both the automatic submit to workflow as well as the match product receipt. So I can see both of those columns. Right from here, I can see that this particular invoice failed. And again, I can drill into that and I can see down at the line item level what happened. So this particular line had reached that maximum number of matching attempts. Remember back in the setup area, I had set that to 2 times. It ran 2 times and it didn't find any matches. So that's why this failed. And now as an accounts payable clerk, they can go in and they can do some investigation with the buyer and figure out where those goods are. Let's see, one more thing I want to note on the workspace itself. Let me click OK. And let's go back to that workspace. There was one other thing that I wanted to show you here. System is lagging just a bit. If you're experiencing some lag too, it's actually on my side. We added a company selector. This was something that we've had a lot of requests for this, so I'm really happy to see that we were able to get this into the product. I can stay right here on the form, not have to log in and out, and you can see that my workspace information dynamically is updated through that. So very small enhancement, but great usability gain that we'll get from that. So that's the My Work. Let's talk about the analytics page. We have this analytics all company. And here you can see some very rich Power BI metrics that help you identify the efficiency of your automation efforts. And this is giving you a view across all of the companies that you're managing. So let's just point out a few of the metrics. You can see how many invoices are in automation, what's currently in workflow, touchless rates, the open balance that you have. And I'll draw your attention to the bottom of my screen, and you can see we have 4 additional tabs. Those tabs give you more detail, so it allows you to drill in. So let's just kind of take a look at some of these metrics. The automation status, again, this is really all about the touchless rate, but it gives you some very nice breakdowns across how automation is going in your company and per vendor group, how long it's taking you to process some invoices. I had some invoices back in December that were processed on this particular environment. Let's take a look at reasons for automation failure. This will help you also tweak your system. Here you can see any invoices that had failed. For example, we had just looked at that one that had failed to submit to workflow. That's one of the things that we track, as well as if it failed posting or if it failed the import. So it gives you some good detail there. One of the tabs that I particularly like is the workflow status tab. Shows you how many invoices are in your workflow, as well as how long things have been in your workflow, and it gives you a nice readout of the assignment per approver. So maybe you need to do some load balancing, you could do that. You know, this isn't a real very realistic view on this, but maybe one of your approvers has 40 invoices and the others have 2. You maybe want to do some load balancing. So some really nice metrics. Goal again is to help you really identify that efficiency of your automation efforts. So let's go back to the workspace, and I want to show you a few other things here. Let's go ahead and go into the pending vendor invoice. And I'd like to talk to you about the enhanced workflow history view and the ability to simulate posting. So let's go ahead. I have one of my invoices that is in workflow, and we have provided a new simplified workflow history. So this particular feature was really in direct response to our AP clerks at our customers' organizations that really wanted a simpler, cleaner workflow history for those accounts payable clerks. One of the things that we heard often was that they really, the key piece of information that they wanted to know was, you know, where is the invoice right now? Who has it? So we developed this timeline view. Again, very much the same view that you saw just a few minutes ago when I showed you the automation history. But here you can see that reverse chronological order of the most pertinent steps as it was transferring from person to person of the workflow. So in this case, I had submitted it. This particular one was assigned to me based on the workflow rules, so not a realistic example, but then I reassigned it to Phyllis. And you can see here we captured the date and time, and then also any comments that the people may have entered in as they were working through that process. I can also access, though, the standard view workflow history. Let me click into that. So this is the form that you're familiar with, and it's a great form. Lots and lots of detail. It's still here, still has a lot of value. But in direct response, though, our customers, accounts payable clerks, really cared about this bottom information, which is why we took that step of giving them the alternate view that you're seeing here. This same view can be seen on our historical invoices. So again, I'll go back to that invoice journal. And let's sort by date. I think the one that I had just used had workflow. Yes, it did, of course. Let me just click on that. And here again, you're going to see that new dialog. You can see that it was submitted by Julia and then workflow completed and the date and time that completed. So again, some nice wins on the posted invoices as well. So the other feature that I want to show you, let's go back to our pending vendor invoice list page. We've added the ability to simulate posting. We've had that now for quite some time in our journals, and we get requests that people would like to use that, of course, in other areas as well. So from the vendor invoice list page, you can simulate posting now. You could multi-select, and I'll go ahead. I have an invoice in here. I think I have a bad date on here, so I think this one will fail. We'll just go ahead and start running this. But what it's doing now is it's checking for any validation errors. It's running through all of the posting code. And you can see now I have a pink bar and a message that it failed. We'll go ahead and we will view the results. Here you can see the status failed. I'm going to click into this, and again, you're going to see some good messaging here. Every single reason why this failed is listed. Now, of course, the first reason is you have to submit it in order for posting to actually succeed. But I put in some bad dates on my invoice to purposely get these other errors to just for demonstration purposes. So go ahead and close that. And again, nice thing about this is you can multi-select and run it for a group, and we do store the result of that as well. So you can get back to that after it has been run. I'll go ahead and let's look at two more features. We added, let me find here, the imported invoice total. Let me make this a bit bigger for you. So we have an imported invoice amount that's available, and think of this as I think of it as a footer type of value where you can easily see the difference between what was contained on that scanned invoice. So imagine I've used a service. A lot of times they will bring in the metadata of the actual totals along with the file and the attachment. And so now on our data entities, you can actually include that as it's coming into the system. So I have an exaggerated example here where I just put in $1 before I imported the invoice. And now on the totals form, you can see there's a new, I'll call it a red badge that says not matched. And it's not matched because my imported invoice amount was $1. But the actual calculated value, so my line values plus any tax that I had, all of the things that make up that invoice amount is equal to $75 US. So it clearly doesn't match. If it had matched, it would be green. The really nice thing though about this feature is that you can use it in your automation efforts. So I'm going to take you back again to the accounts payable parameters form. And we're going to take a look at that vendor invoice automation. Recall when I started the demonstration, I had pointed out that you could opt into processes that needed to be run before you automatically submit. Well, the requiring of the calculated totals to equal those imported totals is one of those things. So if you're bringing in, large amounts of invoices, you can set this to yes. And before the system will even try to submit that into workflow, if those calculated totals don't equal, it will stop. And there at that point, of course, it'll be marked as a failure, and then the clerk could intervene. It would show up on their particular workspace. So it'll save you time. It won't submit it into workflow only to have it fail once it gets to an approver. And then let's go back to our list page again. And another field that I would like to point out is we also have included an invoice received date. This is available in our data entity and through the form. And really, this date provides us with the point at which to start our automation metrics. So if you think back to the analytics that I just showed you on the workspace, this gives us that start date. So it's the physical date that you receive the invoice. So it gives us the metrics such as average days that something has been in automation, or those touchless rates. It helps us with that type of the analytic metrics. And this is simply, like I said, it's the physical date that the invoice was received. If it's included in the file, we of course accept it in the file. If it's not included in the file, then it will automatically stamp it with the system date as it's coming back in. So that really gives us the starting the clock to show you how long it took through the process. All right, so let's just kind of conclude by bringing this back to where we started, showing that summarization of the process again. And again, if you just think about our goal, it's really to work hand in glove with that external invoice capture, where we take that imported data, pushing it all the way through to the posting. And probably most important, I'd want you to remember that you get to decide which processes you opt into. It's very configurable. You can configure those background tasks to run as you want it to. And of course, automation, it's all about the benefit of cost savings. So with that, I will hand it back over to April before we take questions. And I just want to thank you for your time today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Annette.
Yes.
Thank you all. I just want to put a thank you out to the group for letting us share with you today our journey through financial process automation, the investments we've made, and where we're going. And really what we want to do is hear from you. We want to leave some time for Q&A. We also want to leave time for you to share with us what you're seeing and where you see the opportunity for automation to drive meaningful impact for your organization. So we clearly have some great ideas of where we want to go next, but not without wanting to listen to you. So as we go to Q&A today, again, a big thank you for the conference here. We want to definitely encourage you to join the community, because it's through this community that we were offered this opportunity to chat with you. It's a great way to connect with peers. Obviously, we have some great learning sessions out there, and inspire others. I think we have some tech talks coming out on this type of information as well. So with that, let's go ahead and open it up for Q&A and discussion, and of course feedback for you to take the time to share with Ryan and Annette and I your automation journey.
Thank you, April. Thank you, Annette, and Ryan too. There are a couple of questions. I think Annette's jumped on them already, I think, in the chat. I think the first question was from Amit Agrawal, who's asking, can we set up vendor invoice automation for individual vendor or groups of vendor? Can we use run auto match for failed cases on the fly?
Yes, I can take those questions. In terms of the question about whether or not you can opt in per vendor to the automation, the answer to that is no, not at this point. Certainly something that we would be interested in the future, but right now, no, it is a legal entity parameter. And in terms of the question about can the user run the auto match for failed cases on the fly? Yes, it's still even when you're using the vendor invoice automation, you can still use the all of the existing matching out of the box as well.
Nice. So Janet Sandergaard is asking, will this great and nice overview of WF history timeline be available for all the WFs in FinOps or only in vendor invoice?
Yes, right now it is only the vendor invoice. Again, it was really as a direct result of our accounts payable clerks wanting this type of thing, though. I fully do anticipate that a lot of personas would enjoy it as well. So I don't see any reason. It was built for reusability. I'll put it that way. So I think it just will listen to the feedback and respond appropriately.
And there's a big thanks from Atul Shukla asking, great question, a great session. In what PU are these features available?
Specifically for the invoice automation, it was in preview in 14 and 15. So public preview, general availability in .16, so 10.0.16.
And Amit saying, thanks, Annette, for the answers.
Yes, great. And the other ones are already also released as well. They vary across the different updates throughout the last calendar year. So they're out on the release notes. I don't have a table with each one, but they have already all been released.
Thank you, April, and thanks, Annette, for the detailed answers there. Are there any other questions? Please feel free to put your hands up or feel free to drop them in the chat.
Russ, I have a question for the team, of course.
Dr. Ludwig.
Yeah, hello. Hello, April and Annette. Thank you very much for the great presentation and these very, very new and good functionalities. I noticed one little thing in one of your slides. There was a little wall after the first bullet point where it says external data invoice capture. And my question is, when can we see or can we see this little wall be torn down in the future?
Great question. Do you want me to take that one, Annette, or would you like to take that one?
Sure. I think you maybe touched on it in one of.
Yeah, let me reemphasize. Yep. Yeah. So today, and I put the slide up, but the external data invoice capture today can be provided by any solution out there that offers that capabilities, as well as our Azure Cognitive Services team does have this capability in a preview stage. So that is something that can be taken advantage of now. Again, I'll repeat that just because I'm sure a lot of people aren't familiar with that. Azure Cognitive Services is adding that capability and has some preview out there. As a finance team, of course, we're evaluating some tighter connection points, stuff we will be looking for in the future, but there's nothing stopping anyone from utilizing, taking that and training their own model today.
Okay, thank you. I think we have a couple of additional comments and questions in the chat. Do you want me to take this one for you? So there's Ian.
I can't see the chat for some reason. So yeah, if you wouldn't mind reading them, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, so there's Ian asking, the platform looks great from an automation perspective. We have the invoice collection from email and entry into the invoice register with AI Builder working well. Our main gotcha is doing much simpler things like running a Power BI model that can tell if an invoice has been paid or not. So advanced things A1, but still gaps on some basics. Different entities in different access methods is another big bugbear. Desperate for data lake with the entity trigger feed. Have it working, but aggregated entities only. I think these are a lot of things. Maybe just pick up some of them if you can comment.
Yeah, I can take this one, April.
Okay.
Very good points. And part of this ties in, as we're working, as April had mentioned, with the cognitive services, these are all great points because you're absolutely right. We have disparate invoicing tools. We have the journals. We have the invoice register and approval journal, as well as the invoice journal, as well as the vendor invoices. And really, it's all about consolidating that information so that's in a consumable place. It is top of mind for us. It's we hear this quite honestly a lot. It's in all transparency, it's not on our roadmap right now at the moment, but it's definitely top of our minds, and especially as we're moving towards those cognitive services, those are issues that we are going to have to pay a lot of attention to. So I appreciate that feedback.
Okay, then we have some comments. Great and marvelous session. So thanks a lot. A lot of people like these features a lot. So thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, we have still 5 minutes. Is Russ and Suhaib still here?
Hello, sir. Hello, Doctor.
Yeah. Hey.
Hi. Yes. So again, some great new features here around finance automation, which is definitely what the community are looking to use. And I think there's a question by Jan Sendergaard, asking about automatic accrual proposals based on the incoming invoices.
That is another great one that's near and dear to my heart, especially when you think of our register, because I always think of the register kind of provides that accrual when it's posting to the arrival and the arrival offset. And right now, there's nothing on the immediate horizon. I have done a little bit of research in the area. I know that there's an appetite, though, from our customers to have that accrual functionality. So again, something that is on our minds, but not on the immediate roadmap.
And that's the last question.
Okay.
Wonderful.
So thank you, April. Thank you, Annette. And Ryan, for joining us today, taking your time out of your busy schedule, building this fabulous product that we're all using on a day-to-day basis. And do you have any final words for the community?
I don't. I just really wanted to thank you. I wanted to make sure the community is a great way to engage with us. We want to just continue to drive more and more enhancements, and you already gave us some great ideas and feedback. So please continue to connect with us through that community, because we absolutely love doing this stuff and getting a chance to chat with all of you today. So just a great appreciation for setting this up, and thank you.
And finally, from Ian Waring, who mentioned, thank you. Love this perfection isn't too far away. Oh, my word.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll remember that one.
Thank you so much. So I think, Doctor, and I think Sukrut, I think we're all about to present the next speaker.
Yeah, who's next? Who's next?
I wonder who. I think April announced the Dynamics finance community. So I wonder who's behind that. Is that Fawad?
I think it's my friend Fawad. Yeah, must be.
So it's not me. Oh, bad.
Hey everyone, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Fawad.
Excellent. Can I hear a yay for community?
Yes, we can hear you, Fawad.
Excellent. So let me know when I can get started.
I believe we have 2 more minutes. I don't know if we can brace ourselves, if we can hold ourselves for another 2 minutes. What do you think? What do you think, Doctor?
I think so, yeah.
Sukrit.
Yep.
So we've got MVPs from all around the world today. We've got Sukrit from California. We've got Dr. Ludwig from Germany and myself from the UK. And then we've also got Andre from Netherlands. And we had, we're all around the world. I believe now, I believe it's been a long day. It's been a long day for everyone. I think there's one more session after this, which one more session is after this, and it's been a long day, 6 o'clock in the morning. I think, Fawad, I think we're ready to go. I think the community is ready to finally meet you in person, because I think a lot of people don't realize who you are and what you've been doing. So I think, Fawad, over to you.
Thank you. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you. I'm going to be talking about community, and not just Power Platform communities, but Dynamics and Power Platform communities. Internally, we call them business applications community. Let me share my screen here. Let me know once you can see it.
Yes, we can see that one, yeah.
Okay. Great. So let me, first of all, before I get started, does this slide look familiar? Yes, it is. I want to thank all of you. Raz, Dr. Ludwig, Sukrit, and all the other folks who have put this event together. It's a great way to evangelize, to learn, and to share. And that's what community is all about to us, right? And I'm here to tell you a bit more about community, how we think internally, and what are some of the things that we are doing, we plan to do, and how you can get engaged and make this a wonderful place for yourself and for your peers and colleagues, or anyone who is getting into Dynamics 365 or Power Platform to come and use the free resources that are available to you. But thank you again to all of you. I don't know, Dr. Ludwig is here. I know Raz, you are here, and a bunch of other folks. I don't know if Andre is still attending or not, but some of you I know personally and have chatted with you. Want to thank you for your participation in the community, for holding such great events, and making sure that we get the word out there for the products that we have in the Dynamics and the Power Platform ecosystem. A little bit about myself. I've been at Microsoft for 15 years. Very active on Twitter, very active on LinkedIn. I have my personal blog too, if you wanted to follow and continue the conversation through any of those social channels, would love to do that. A quick giveaway at the end. So if you listen to my presentation, and I'm going to tell you a few things. There's a t-shirt we'll send you. You'll have to go to a certain page and basically then answer some questions. What do I want to cover today is primarily talk about Microsoft Business Application Groups community. So when I'm saying Business Application Group, I'm talking about Dynamics 365, Power Apps, Power BI, Power Virtual Agents, Power Automate, or what we call the Power Platform, and the Dynamics. I want to talk about those communities. I will concentrate a bit on the online communities that are available to you that you can utilize to connect, learn, and share, but definitely can talk about other aspects of the community, because community is not just going to one portal and answering forum questions. It's much more than that. And setting up a great event that you all have done over here is definitely a big part of that. I will do a quick overview of Dynamics 365 community that is available there. all your apps, all the Dynamics have their specific areas within the Dynamics 365 community that we have. We have Power Platform communities. As I said, those are the 4 products that we have. So the Power Platform stack, I'll talk about that. Want to talk about recognition. I know we don't help or share things just to get recognized, but we understand the effort and the hard work that each one of you puts into coming to the community and helping others. So there are a lot of opportunities to get recognized for your hard work and for helping others. And then some go-to actions and how you can get involved in the community is what I'm going to talk about at the end. Okay. And I want to give you a quick demo too at the same time, just show you around. But this is like a bird's eye view, just one slide, which pretty much tells you what is available on the online community. So when I talk about online communities, first I'll talk about Dynamics. So community.dynamics.com. I mean, you have these URLs available to you. You can go directly to those communities and get involved. And Power BI is missing here, but it's community.powerbi.com. And then there are specific blogs. So those are the official blogs that are available to you for all the technical content that the product PMs are creating, or all the general managers or VPs who are creating this business decision maker content that's available through the blogs on these specific blog URLs that I've given you, depending on which technology or which app you are dealing with. Forums. So let me dive deeper into forums on Dynamics community a bit more. Forums is basically your typical Q&A pairs that we get on any community forum platform. So you can come and ask questions. You can come and basically start a discussion if you wanted to about a product or any difficulty that you are having, or if you wanted free advice. You can definitely use discussions for that. We have a lot of community blogs too. Just to call out the difference, the blogs that exist on Dynamics community are primarily the community blogs. This blog is the official blog, I would call it. This is the blog where most of the product teams are doing blogging and most of the business decision maker blogs reside. There are galleries available. Those have basically examples, which has examples of products that are being used by different customers and partners, how they have set up different products. There is an events area within our community where we advertise great events like this one that you all are hosting. And then there's webinars where product teams, as they bring in new feature and functionality into the product, they would hold a webinar, and we basically help them host that webinar or create that webinar, and then we put the videos in the webinars area. So great resource available to you overall. One area that is not in this slide, and I want to show you it's on this slide, is my community area. This is a nice way to personalize your experience. Did you know that the community Dynamics community has been there for almost 13 years? Some of you have been using Dynamics product for a long time. Some of you are new, but for newer folks, the community has lots and lots of good content that you can tap into. Not only the online applications that we have, like finance, SCM, commerce, etc., but also if you are working with customers and partners who are still managing or maintaining Dynamics AX or Dynamics CRM, there are forums available, there's content available that you can come and use to basically learn about those products too. So let me just give you, okay, I'm going to give you a demo here, but again, just a bird's eye view. There are tech talks. I want to talk a bit more about tech talks. There are webinars, events. We talked about that. There are videos. There are lots of videos that you can use. And we're also starting a series of videos on feature functionality And these will be short videos. The webinars that I just talked about are typically long, half an hour to 40 minutes, but we're going to start a series of 3 to 5 minute videos that you'll be able to consume to learn about new feature and functionality. There are a lot of videos that are also created by product marketing organization. We also host them in the community, and those are great starter videos if you want to learn real quick about a new technology that has just been introduced by us and you wanted to get an overview of that. These videos are really a great piece of content to go and consume to learn about the new product. And again, these are really small videos, 2 to 3 minutes, and is a great way to get up to speed on the new product. There are three special communities that exist within the bigger Dynamics community. Accelerators is one. I know that Microsoft is very busy. We are busy introducing a lot of industry solutions. As you know, last week, retail industry solution was introduced. We have manufacturing industry solutions, and there would be more coming. And we also have some accelerators that you can pick up to get going with different industry verticals that exist. UCI community is primarily around customer engagement apps. The UCI interface that has been introduced in customer engagement apps. If you want to have a discussion or you have questions around that, you can go to UCI community. And then academic community also exists primarily for students and educators who are interested in learning about the product or using the product. All right, let's look at the community. This is the fun part, other than the slides I was going through. So how do I get to the community? Community.dynamics.com, right? And few key things I want to call out. We highlight all the folks who are helping us out in different areas of the community. Doesn't matter what app you're dealing with. I see Andre here, Dr. Ludwig Reinhardt is here, Martin, and other folks are over here. We spotlight a person who has gone above and beyond in working with the community and helping us build awareness for the product, or is helping others succeed in using the product. Faisal, I believe he's from Australia. He's the one person we recognize this month, and we do a monthly spotlight of the person who's going above and beyond. So a lot of recognition opportunities. I'll talk about that in a bit here. But few key things that you should look at or you should know is that depending on what app you are working in, you can go to a specific area within the community. So I know we have been talking about finance, so let's just go to the finance community area. We made some changes recently that you will hopefully appreciate. These cards used to feature different things, but any upcoming events which are critical and we want to highlight, we would put them over here. And we have also spun up a series, AMA series through the community that I'll be hosting. And Lori Lemkin is, she's the VP of the marketing app. She'll be talking about the strategy and the vision and taking questions from the community on February 11th. And we are going to bring in Georg, who did the keynote 2 hours back. He's going to be talking to the community. So again, a great opportunity for you to join that session. We are bringing in Manoj, who is the GM for supply chain management. We are bringing Swami from Fast Track team. So you can ask Swami around all the deployments that you all might be helping with around finance and operation apps. And we also are going to bring in other VPs and general managers to come and discuss their vision and strategy on the product. And that would be a great opportunity for you to be asking them questions. If there's one place on this, this is my favorite place, featured resources. So what we did was we said, okay, what is the most important content that somebody who comes into the community wants to get to? And we said, okay, videos, these are the videos I was talking about. These are the product marketing videos that introduce the product. So if you click on that, I'll open it in a new tab here. We import a YouTube playlist directly into the community, and you can watch these videos on the fly inline if you wanted to. So the videos are there. There are a lot of learning modules, right? Microsoft Learn. Microsoft Learn is a portal, learn.microsoft.com. You can go there and consume a lot of learning paths or courses to learn about finance app. And that's another key resource. If you want to read documentation about finance and you want to start from looking at documentation, there you go. We'll take you to the right place. This is the homepage for all documentation for Dynamics 365 Finance. So at your fingertips, we want to get you closer to the content that makes you successful. That's the whole goal for bringing all the resources in one place. Now, I don't know if you are aware, some of you are, some of you may not be. There are really good and deep technical talks that happen, that the Fast Track team, that is Swami's team leading, that you might be interested in doing. If you are engaged and involved in a lot of customer implementation and deployment, I would highly recommend these tech talks for you, to go look at that and see how you can help customers and partners with these deep deployments, deep technical deployments. So there are a lot of tech talks for finance you can reach out to. You can go and discover all the blogs. Now we will bring in both the community blogs, and we also syndicate that official blog that I showed you. I showed you the URL on the other slide into the community. Sure, the blog sits over there, but we syndicate it over here for you. We will also link you to a place where you can give us feature requests. You can give us ideas on, hey, how can you add another feature into the product so it caters better to other customers. So you can submit ideas. If you click on this, this will go to our ideas portal, and you can open ideas about the product over there. And then my favorite part, this is a feature we introduced 6 months back, is personalizing your experience, right? I told you 13 years. We have had this, this community for 13 years. If I wanted to, say, get just certain content and I want to focus on that content, you can personalize your experience. We call this area My Community. You can easily access it from multiple places. You can go to My Community on the top, or you can click here, or you can click here and just get to this area. Before I show you that, because that's one of my favorite areas within the community, we are also highlighting key folks now within particular areas within the community. So I know Nicholas has been very active in the finance community. So we are recognizing people from within that community. If you went to a different area for a different app in the community, if you went to supply chain management, as an example, you'll see Junaid Adris as one of the key folks who have been recognized there for being very active in this community. So let me quickly show you My Community, which is one of my favorite features, going back to the fact that there's so much content that is available here that we wanted to make sure that you can build a targeted experience for yourself, which shows you the focused content that you like to see. So if you went to this experience, and by the way, you can use this experience as an unauthenticated user, or you can use it as somebody who's logged in. Right now, if you look here, I'm logged into the community. So what you do over here is you basically say, hey, show me the content that I'm interested in. So if I am new to Microsoft Finance and I want to learn about the finance app or the product, and I would pick Microsoft Learn. That is what I was telling you. That's the official Learn portal, not only for Azure, but also for Dynamics 365. So I'll say Microsoft Learn, then you select, and this is a filtered experience, very simple filtered experience. You can decide, hey, what kind of modules or courses you want to look at, beginner, intermediate, advanced. I'll just say beginner for now. So then I can select my product. So I want to go and select finance or supply chain as an example. I can do both. And I apply the filter. And there you go. I'm just going to collapse this, but you will get access and you're just one click away from consuming these modules. But we identify what is the right content for you to consume. So again, our goal is to make you successful. You find the content that will help you resolve your issues, that will give you that knowledge and expertise so you can go and deploy these products or manage, configure, or maintain. Doesn't matter what phase of the product life cycle you are in, helping your customers or partners, you are able to do that. So again, I can tweak this and I can say, hey, you know what? I want to see tech talks, those deep tech talks that the fast track team creates. And I want to see it, let's see, for commerce as an example. Commerce is, again, one of the operations app. And for all roles, you can also specify roles, because as you have noticed, if you have logged into our community or if you created an account, you have to specify your role. And you can say, or you can say, show me tech talks for all roles. You apply the filter, and there you go. We're going to pull up the commerce tech talks for you. So a nice way to get to the content as quickly as possible and start learning and becoming an expert. All right. So a few key other areas that I want to show you that would be of the use. So this header is important for you. I think if you find your way around the community, you can get to the content. You can do it through our My Community experience, or you can just go use the navigation header and get to the right resource. Let's go to SCM as a change. So if I am in the SCM area of the community, again, few key things I want to call out. We are calling out the star from this community, from SCM community. We are putting the key resources at your fingertips, and we are telling you about the key events that we are holding in the near future that you can get to. You can get to the forum and ask a question, or you can click over here. This is an activity feed. This is a live activity feed that's showing you all the questions that are coming into the forum, SCM forum, and I'm also showing you if there are any blogs that we host or syndicate. They also show up over here. So I can ask a question, simple thing. And there you go. I'm not going to go into it, but you can put the subject and pick a category of what kind of issue you are seeing in SCM, and you're ready to roll, and we can post your question in there. Just so you know, because this is Finance and Operations Summit, Finance and SCM are the top two most active areas of our community. So there's a high probability if you posted a question, one of your peers, people from this crowd here, will either answer the question, or somebody from Microsoft can also answer your question. So I'm really excited about talking to you all about this, because you all keep this community very busy and very vibrant, that's for sure. Resources. Now, this is another way to get to all the resources. If you wanted to get to Microsoft Learn, you can get from here, Tech Talks, document. You can get to UCI community if you are working with customer engagement apps, academic community for academia, for students and educators. We have galleries, SCM blogs very specific to SCM, and those videos that I was talking about, the videos, product marketing videos that exist in the community are also available. If you're new to the community, I highly recommend going to the Info Center. We always, every day, we have something going on in the community. So if there's something happening in the community, we will post it as a blog post here. So you can go to community news. Just as an example to show you, there was a tech talk done on commerce. And we'll tell you if it's published, where it is, and how you can get to it. So this is a very active area. Like yesterday, if you look here, we posted here yesterday, and every day we have something going on. So you want to stay on top of community, what content is being created and all that. This is a great place. Obviously, you can get to leaderboards if you are into gamification and you want to see, hey, how high you're ranking with all your other peers. You can get to that. You want to become a top contributor. In our community, we call them MCCs, or Microsoft Community Contributors, although we might change that name now. We're thinking about calling you all active people super users. So you can become that. It's a badge we give out every quarter. You can request a blog. I talked about community blogs. You can host a blog, or you can syndicate a blog. So if you already have a blog somewhere else on your WordPress site, you can syndicate it to our community if you wanted to. Or if you want to create a blog, we will create a blog for you. If you're an active blogger, we would love to get your content on our community too. And obviously, you can also provide us feedback. Okay. Tech Talks, just real quick, going a little deeper in Tech Talks. Tech Talks are being created for various apps and products we have. So you can filter by whatever product you are interested in. One of, I don't know if some of you are dealing with the commerce product, but there is a whole slew of Tech Talks that were added for the commerce product. And we are continuing to bring in more commerce apps, commerce Tech Talks. So keep an eye out and filter it by commerce, and you'll see all the Tech Talks that we have posted or created. And also, again, you can always go back. You can always go back to the community news area and see what are some of the recent Tech Talks that have come in. All right. I want to shift gears just a little bit and talk about Power Platform communities. 4 products, 4 separate communities. A little different than the Dynamics world, right? We have one community area for all the Dynamics app that exist in that ecosystem, but Power Platform communities are a bit different. There was a decision made that we're going to have a separate community for each of the products within the Power Platform ecosystem. So there is a Power BI community, Power Apps community, Automate community, and Virtual Agents community. Now, the kind of content modalities that exist in these Power Platform communities is the same. Obviously, as you know, the most important content modality is the forums, the Q&A pairs that also exist in Dynamics communities. You have galleries, you have videos, you have gallery which shows you product examples on how certain customers are using the products. And you can also send a request to put your product. If you're using the product in a unique way, we can get those hosted and show that in the galleries. You have blogs. Now the blogs are different. The blogs, again, are different. The blogs are separate from the Power Apps community. In Dynamics community, the community blogs were integrated within the community itself. And the official blog was obviously sitting on the side. But in Power Platform, the blogs are completely separate. There's no concept of community blogs, but there's a concept of an official blog that we have for each of these products. So just to show you real quick, if you wanted to get to any of the blogs or any of the communities, here you go. Here are the links. And you know, it's simple. It's simple. All you do is community.theproductname.com. So as an example, I have these open here. I'll just go in real quick and show you. So I'm in Power Apps community. So in Power Apps, there are different areas set up for different functionality that is being discussed. If customers want to discuss Dataverse or they are interested in building Power Apps, they are separate. We call them boards, but these are separate forums. Think of them as separate forums that have been set up. There are blogs that we link to. Any news, you can come and read news over here. And there are a lot of videos that are available. So there are app samples. There are a lot of community app samples. There are webinars and video gallery here. You can look at the videos. And there are some special galleries like Kids Zone, etc., or the emergency response gallery that was created in response to COVID-19. And if you look at all of the 4 communities, this is the Power Automate. The look and feel would be the same. So we wanted to make sure that the user experience and the UI experience is consistent across all these web properties that we have. And this is the newly Power Virtual Agent that got introduced almost mid last year. One thing over here in these communities, if something significant is happening within one of these products, that would be shown over here in the carousel that's running. So I told you in Dynamics community, you can go to our news blog and find everything. For Power Platform, you can get the news right here in the carousel. So something really cool. It takes you 5-10 seconds to understand what are some of the new things happening in these communities. This is just screenshots of the community here. My presentation is going to be smaller. I don't want to stand between you or your sleep or your dinner or whatever, lunch, breakfast, depending on where you are. But recognition opportunities. We understand you do it because you want to do it. You want to help others. You want to share what you have learned. But we feel like we want to recognize you for all the great work that you all do. It does not matter if it's one of the Power Platform communities you're engaged in, or if you're engaged in Dynamics community. We want to make sure we recognize you. There are badges. I've just gave you a sample of some of the super user badges that you can get from Power Platform communities. From Dynamics, there are lots of badges. I'm just showing you that one badge that I talked about, which is the Microsoft Community Contributor badge. That this is our coveted badge that we give to super users every quarter. I know some of you on the call might be MCCs. So this is one badge that is really cool that we hand out to all the deeply engaged community users. There are leaderboards. I showed you, you can get to the leaderboard from the community drop in Dynamics. You can become a moderator. In Dynamics community, there's an opportunity to come and help us. There are a lot of forums. If you are in SCM, as an example, you want to become a moderator, just email us, let us know, and we can make you a moderator. You can help us in managing the forums. Top contributor talked about that. Recognition all over the place. We do a community spotlight. I showed you Faisal from Australia was recognized this month, and then there are a lot of other folks that we have recognized throughout the year. We have been doing this almost for 2 years now, that we always make sure that we go out of our way to highlight the people who have gone above and beyond in helping others succeed. And then their community stars. This is also highlighted on Dynamics Community's homepage. So how do you get involved if you're not already involved, right? Step number 1, you basically sign up. Sign up for community, start answering questions, become a moderator, syndicate a blog, share content on the social media. I have put some of the hashtags that you can use. Since I live most of the time in the Dynamics community, this is the one I use primarily on LinkedIn. When all my posts that I do on LinkedIn, this is one of mine. But if you live in the Power Platform world, there are a lot of hashtags that you can use that are monitored, and we get excited when you use these hashtags to spread the word. Here's a slide. I would appreciate if you guys can help us spread the word about the community, and use this slide as the last slide. I don't know if you noticed, but when Georg was presenting, he showed this slide. When April was presenting, she also showed this slide. Annette, April, and Ryan when they were presenting. So this is a slide you can pick and use in basically your in your presentations that you do out to other folks to make sure that people are coming to the community and helping out. And thank you again for helping us and helping spread the word. And with that, I'm going to stop and take some questions, but there are 3 questions I have put here. If you go to this link, it's open here, FinOps Summit FCon. There are 3 questions, and we're going to do a giveaway. We're going to send you some T-shirts for people. We'll do a sweepstake or and we'll pick some random users and we'll send you T-shirts. Let me get to that page first. You will land on this page, and there are 3 questions that we ask. You'll have to create an account, and then you just reply back and put it in comments, the answer to these questions, and we'll send T-shirts to the first 5 people through a random drawing. Questions are: where do you go to personalize your community? This is really small. So where in Dynamics community can you access deep technical talks, videos? And where in Power Apps community can you go to access videos? So we'll send you T-shirts for the people who come and post here. We'll do the drawing on Monday, Pacific time. Here's just an image of the T-shirt. And with that, I want to take questions. One thing I would love for all the participants here to ask questions, not about only the online portals, but any other question you have around building community or nurturing or growth of communities, such as events like this or any other user group information you need or anything about the community. So I don't want to just focus on the online part of the community, but would love to take questions from everyone on the call around all aspects of the community.
Thank you there, Fawad. So Fawad, did you want to share a link?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we'll paste this into the chat for everybody to get involved in that prize, because that's some nice swag we've got there, some exclusive swag, which we all like.
So Raz, I'm having difficulty. Is there?
It's fine. I'm pasting it in now for you.
Okay, great. Thank you. There you go. It's FinOps Summit FCon, aka.ms.
Yep, got it. Just put it in there now. There you are. Okay, so that's the link, everyone. So please complete that if you want to win the prizes. I know Fawad has got exclusive access to this swag, so even I'm trying to get my hands on some of this stuff. So
there you go, Raz. You're gonna get it anyway.
Oh, I think we're all we're all trying to get some of that. I think Faisal's got some swag he received recently this week as well. So yeah, so thanks. So we got the link, everybody. So please take advantage of that. We'll share that link again throughout the next 2 days so that all 2,000. So we've had for this event we had 2,030 registrations. I know not everyone has joined at the same time, and I know a lot of you will be joining tomorrow for the weekend boot camp, which starts tomorrow morning. And we still have 2 sessions left of the day, one with the Microsoft Black Belt team and one with Yogesh for data migration. But I know Fawad has got lots to do regarding the community, and I know I myself met Fawad personally at the Business Application Summit. I don't know if you can say anything about the Business Application Summit today, Fawad, and maybe I'm crossing the line there.
No, I think it definitely is happening. It's going to be virtual. I mean, that's given. It's happening, and I don't know if we released the date, but around the same time frame. But I believe it's going to be virtual. That's the most I know.
Awesome. Well, I had great memories meeting you in
Yeah,
person
definitely.
at the Business Application Summit that we had, and you look forward to the next one that's virtual. So again, we'll be sharing information about that as well. But the most important thing is that everyone gets signed up to these communities. That's the most important thing. Everyone today, please follow the links and get signed up to the Dynamics 365 community and to the Power Platform community. That's where all the action is. That's where I began my journey into the community, and where everyone begins their journey in the community. It's from this forum right here. And it's the access to all the information and help you're going to get, really. So again, it's a hidden gem. It is a hidden gem, I have to admit. But it is really, really the best place to begin your journey with the community.
I see some hands, so.
Ludwig.
Yeah. I have a short question. I have a short question for forward. I mean, you showed so many content and features where people can get started to learn. And I especially found the tech talks very helpful. But what I'm asking is, because we have here a lot of people, and sometimes you're looking for a specific topic. And my question is, do we have a feature that allows people to suggest specific topics for tech talks?
That's a great question. So I know
as an example, that what April just presented us. I mean, if we would have something that people can maybe vote for, or something where we want to have a deeper dive, maybe something for the future.
Yeah, absolutely, Ludwig. There's opportunity to that. If you want to channel those suggestions through me, I can get those to the fast track team. It is the fast track team that works with respective product teams. So if there's something going on in finance, they will either do it themselves and have a deeper tech talk, or they will work with the finance product team to get those. But happy to get suggestions from you and other folks on what are some of the topics where you want to learn more, and where you feel we should have a cadence of certain topics that need to have deeper tech talks. So happy to take any suggestion and see if we can operationalize that. One of the things that you will see, and I mentioned it during my presentation, is commerce. Commerce, if you are in the commerce product, commerce team is very busy working with the fast track team to build a whole slew of tech talks. And if you feel there's a product, let's just take SCM as an example, or human resources. If you feel like there are products that need much more deeper knowledge disseminated through us, through these tech talks, I'm happy to take that and see if we can get those going.
Well, you got my vote for that. Thank you for that, Doctor, because I completely vote for that. I think a lot of people on this call would also be voting for that, definitely. And there's a question, Faisal. Hi, Faisal.
Hi, Faisal. He's on mute? No.
Hi.
I love the t-shirt, Faisal.
Yes, thank you so much. It was a very great presentation. So I just woke up for your presentation and just wanted to show you that and say thank you to you. I wanted to show you the swag which I received. It looks really perfect. And wonderful. Thanks for the nice gift.
Thank you. No, thank you for your contributions. It's look, at the end of the day, it's all about helping each other. You guys don't do it for becoming the spotlight or whatever, but that's the end result. We recognize what you're doing, You don't have to worry about that part. We see all the activity in the community, like Raz and Andre and Ludwig and you and all of you have gone and set up this event. We recognize that. Faisal, you set up an event with Raz and everybody, the Hindi and the Urdu event that was set up. So believe me, all the work that you all are doing is not going in vain. It is looked at, and we want to make sure that we thank all of you with whatever we can. And thank you again for all your contributions. So much appreciated.
Thank you so much.
I have a question, actually. I have a question I want to ask community, and maybe it might or might not be related, but it is around, we are looking for some key people or MVPs or influencers for our solution accelerators and also for customer insights. Those are two, I want to say, products in which I'm interested in talking to folks who are on this call. If you are working with other customers and partners, having discussions around any of these two areas, I would love to chat with you and see how we can build community around these two specific product categories. So you can ping me directly if you are working on any of these two areas.
Out of curiosity, Fawad, out of all the accelerators that are out there, which is the one that that is probably the more that has most of the attention? Because we did a community event on the healthcare accelerator, as you know, in December. I wanted to get an idea. I mean, do you know, is there much information about the accelerators? I know it's a new section on the community, but I believe it is going to become big.
Yeah, I think I think all of them are equally there, but what is really happening now is if you look at the industry solutions for different vertical markets that we have out there, those are becoming important. So the commerce one that got released last week, manufacturing, and I believe there'll be more coming. But if you are in a specific industry, and I know Raz or Ludwig, you pinged me on, it was the healthcare accelerator. But if you have questions on that, I'm working with somebody internally to make sure that we build a community for that. So definitely, it'll be great to have some events or some learning events or networking events for people who are interested in those two product categories, as I was mentioning.
Thank you so much for that. So I think is there any final messages you would like to give to the community? I know the first step is just sign up, you know, to the community. Is there anything else?
I see a question, I don't know, from one of the attendees. I don't know, before I say my goodbye here. Is Mansoor? Oh, no. There. Okay, somebody was raising
is raising his hand. That's correct.
Okay, let's make him a presenter. Faiz, we're going to make Mansoor, we're going to make you a presenter. And there you go, Mansoor. Please ask your question.
Yeah, hi guys. Thank you for letting me ask the question. On the slide, I could see that you said you're talking of blogs, and you said create your blog. But I've also been reading a lot of Dynamics blogs. I think Dr. Ludwig has a personal blog, so I'm not really sure as to which one is better and what are we gaining with opening a blog here.
So the idea is that our community portal, community.dynamics.com, have the best quality content. And there are two ways you can have your blog content on Dynamics community. One is that if you have an already existing blog, we can syndicate it. So all the content for the blog would show in our community, but there would be a link that says, hey, this blog is authoritatively hosted somewhere else. That's one option if you already have a blog. The second option is where you say, hey, I don't have even any blog, but I'm very interested in blogging about this interest I have in customer insights or in one of the, maybe the healthcare accelerator. Can you give me space on your community to host a blog, and then we'll give you all kinds of permission where you can start doing blogging and creating blog posts and all those. So those are the two options that you have on Dynamics community, either hosting or you can go and ask for syndication of your blog. If you go here to Info Center, there's a link right here, request a new blog. This is a great starting place for either of those two options that I'm mentioning.
Also to add on that, Mansoor, it's Andre here. I do have my own blog, and that's just because I loved to create an own website. I'm using WordPress in the backend, looking at different technologies and some additions to make it a real nice looking and also attractive blog page. But I think already also a lot of users are also coming from the Dynamics community, seeing the synced details of my blog, and then continue reading on my blog or every other blog. So it would also be a bit of a personal interest. Do you just want to share your information and want to get started? Then it's the community blog is a great start. I just love to create my own and have it synced. And if you have your own blog, then you can also add some other gimmicks on it. Like I do have a photo gallery, not adding that much photos recently, but I would love to do it in that way. And I also just recently started a kind of experiment with an own download section where I share some of my code examples. I did it in the past on GitHub, but I thought, well, probably it makes more sense for me because I'm not that kind of Git specialist, just to share the components on my blog directly. But I would love to see, if you want to also share your knowledge, I would love to see and read your blogs as well.
And to add to that, Andre, I actually did it the other way around. I wanted to create my own blog, so I had my own blog, but then I realized it required a lot of maintenance. And then what I found myself doing was every time I wanted to do a quick blog, I thought, you know what, instead of having to write a very large blog that takes a couple of hours, I want to do smaller blogs. I ended up just starting writing it directly to my blog on the community forum. And that way I was able to share content very quickly without having to worry about how it looked too much on my personal blog. So I guess there's two sides to it, I guess, and you got to choose what works for you.
Absolutely. Both of you, Andre and Raz, have good points, Mansoor, that you want to consider. I mean, look here, this blog, this is my personal blog. And I maintain it, just like Andre was saying, it's a WordPress site. I enjoy going and tweaking it. I have a lot of plugins. Those were the things Andre was saying. If you want to customize it, you can go get your own WordPress site. But if you didn't want to maintain it, to Raz's point, and you just want a platform there for you, which is managed, it's a managed platform, and all you do is go open up an editor and start writing and click on post, and there you go, your blog post is there, then having your own blog in the community is a better choice. Or if you have your current blog, as I told you, you can syndicate it.